We are experiencing the greatest technological and economic shift in human history. We need a way to help millions of Americans transition through this period, and a universal basic income is the best and most efficient way to do that. Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. I believe I have the right vision, priorities, and values to improve the lives of millions of Americans. 7 years ago, I started Venture for America to train hundreds of young entrepreneurs to build businesses in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, and other communities across the country. Together, we helped create thousands of jobs. But during this time, I came to realize that technology has already wiped out 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states. And it's about to do the same thing to people who work in retail, food service and food prep, customer service, transportation, as well as industries like insurance, accounting, medicine, and law. I saw so much over the last number of years traveling this country. What I experienced was an eye-opener to me, where I would walk through abandoned neighborhoods and boarded up businesses. I have 2 young boys, and I'm deeply concerned about the future that they're going to grow up in. If we don't change things dramatically, they're going to grow up in a country with fewer and fewer opportunities, and a handful of companies and individuals reaping the gains from new technologies, while the rest of us struggle to find opportunities and eventually lose our jobs. And it doesn't need to be that way. Under my plan, every American adult will receive $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from automation. If we provide a universal basic income, Americans will be able to go back to school, move for a new opportunity, start their own business, and really have their head up as they plan for the future. With your help, we can make universal basic income a reality. Join us, and let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts people first. Over the last number of years, we have automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Missouri, and Iowa, all states that were swing states and competitive, and all states that went to Donald Trump. So that's the state we're in right now, and unfortunately, I'm here to say things are going to get much, much worse. What we did to the manufacturing workers, we're about to do to retail workers, call center workers, fast food workers, truck drivers, and on through the economy.
The only thing I worry about is that some total unknown that nobody ever heard of comes along.
Then there's Andrew Yang.
Andrew Yang, entrepreneur and author of The War on Normal People.
Andrew, you're running for president.
Yes, I am. So we're in the 3rd or 4th inning of the greatest technological and economic shift in human history.
He's looking at what's happening in tech and automation and AI, and he says this is going to be catastrophic if we don't figure out how to deal with it, and he thinks UBI is the solution.
Every American gets $1,000 a month.
I've never seen shareholders get upset when a company declares a dividend. This is a dividend for the American people. We are the richest, most advanced society in the history of mankind.
He's really been campaigning on a platform of ideas, and it's been fascinating to watch how that has taken off, and I think that kind of candidate really could make headway.
I'm Andrew Yang. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm not a politician. I'm a problem solver.
Some people call me a futurist, and I say I'm a presentist. It's just that the other politicians are stuck in the past.
Right now, 57% of Americans can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. What happens when you put $1,000 a month into their hands? Where does that money go? They're going to spend it, right, in their local community.
Instead of GDP, we should be measuring childhood education rates, average income, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, environmental sustainability, the proportion of our elderly who can retire in quality circumstances. If we change the measurements, we can change everything. We spend twice as much as other industrialized countries on our healthcare than other countries because our system rewards activity and not healthfulness. And as president, I will move us towards Medicare for all and get the incentives right.
Washington, D.C. is not a town of leaders, it's a town of followers. We need to create a wave in the rest of the country and bring that wave crashing down on their heads. And I'm here tonight to ask you, will you create that wave with me? Yes! Together, we can build a new economy that prioritizes human beings, and we can take this disaster of a presidency and swing it the other direction. We have to have our own vision and have the courage to say, if we invest in ourselves, then we will all win.
Please welcome to the stage
the next president.
The next president.
the next president
Of the United States.
Of the United States.
Andrew Yang.
I think being a parent changes your outlook on everything. Suddenly you're living for something greater than yourself, and you are interested in protecting our society, our culture, our environment for future generations. And I think that is why he decided to run for president. Andrew saw the problems that nobody else saw, and he saw that the best solution was something called universal basic income, which it sounded too good to be true. But the more he talked to me about it, I thought, wow, if this is possible, this will be the greatest thing to ever happen in our society, especially in terms of helping women who still make up the majority of the poor in our country. We all know at least one woman who's stuck in a bad situation where they rely on someone financially or they're in a job that exploits them. The freedom dividend would be such a game changer. You know, Andrew has said that women do the hardest, most unrecognized work in our society. And it's true. You know, I've been a stay-at-home mom and I've worked at companies large and small, and hands down, being a mom is the hardest job. And just because I don't get a paycheck doesn't mean that there isn't value in that work. So I love the way that Andrew has reframed what work means, and nobody else would step up to do this if not for him.
Universal basic income sounds like science fiction, a utopian dream, but it's no fantasy. It's as fundamental as clean air and clean water, a good education, or healthcare. It's a floor on which to stand, an inheritance we're owed, a share in our society, a dividend that pays through our whole lives. We need more than wages. We need capital, because capital grows, and capital is power. The power to live, the power to create, the power to share, the power to choose. We call that power freedom. It's what we fight for, what we march for, what we vote for. We owe it to ourselves. Let's collect the check. Let's collect the freedom dividend. Vote for Andrew Yang as the Democratic nominee for president in 2020. We owe it to ourselves.
Elderly voters, because they have so much knowledge and so much historical context.
We are experiencing the greatest technological and economic shift in human history. We need a way to help millions of Americans transition through this period, and a universal basic income is the best and most efficient way to do that. Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. I believe I have the right vision, priorities, and values to improve the lives of millions of Americans. 7 years ago, I started Venture for America to train hundreds of young entrepreneurs to build businesses in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, and other communities across the country. Together, we helped create thousands of jobs. But during this time, I came to realize that technology has already wiped out 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states. And it's about to do the same thing to people who work in retail, food service and food prep, customer service, transportation, as well as industries like insurance, accounting, medicine, and law. I saw so much over the last number of years traveling this country. What I experienced was an eye-opener to me, where I would walk through abandoned neighborhoods and boarded up businesses. I have 2 young boys, and I'm deeply concerned about the future that they're going to grow up in. If we don't change things dramatically, they're going to grow up in a country with fewer and fewer opportunities, and a handful of companies and individuals reaping the gains from new technologies, while the rest of us struggle to find opportunities and eventually lose our jobs. And it doesn't need to be that way. Under my plan, every American adult will receive $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from automation. If we provide a universal basic income, Americans will be able to go back to school, move for a new opportunity, start their own business, and really have their head up as they plan for the future. With your help, we can make universal basic income a reality. Join us and let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts people first.
Over the last number of years, we have automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Missouri, and Iowa, all states that were swing states and competitive, and all states that went to Donald Trump. So that's the state we're in right now, and unfortunately, I'm here to say things are going to get much, much worse. What we did to the manufacturing workers, we're about to do to retail workers, call center workers, fast food workers, truck drivers, and on through the economy.
The only thing I worry about is that some total unknown that nobody ever heard of comes along.
Then there's Andrew Yang.
Andrew Yang, entrepreneur and author of The War on Normal People.
Andrew, you're running for president.
Yes, I am. So we're in the third or fourth inning of the greatest technological and economic shift in human history.
He's looking at what's happening in tech and automation and AI, and he says this is going to be catastrophic if we don't figure out how to deal with it, and he thinks UBI is the solution.
Every American gets $1,000 a month.
I've never seen shareholders get upset when a company declares a dividend. This is a dividend for the American people. We are the richest, most advanced society in the history of mankind.
He's really been campaigning on a platform of ideas, and it's been fascinating to watch how that has taken off, and I think that kind of candidate really could make headway.
I'm Andrew Yang. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm not a politician. I'm a problem solver.
Some people call me a futurist, and I say I'm a presentist. It's just that the other politicians are stuck in the past.
Right now, 57% of Americans can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. What happens when you put $1,000 a month into their hands? Where does that money go? They're going to spend it, right, in their local community. Instead of GDP, we should be measuring childhood education rates, average income, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, environmental sustainability, the proportion of our elderly who can retire in quality circumstances. If we change the measurements, we can change everything.
We spend twice as much as other industrialized countries on our healthcare than other countries because our system rewards activity and not healthfulness. And as president, I will move us towards Medicare for all and get the incentives right.
Washington, D.C. is not a town of leaders, it's a town of followers. We need to create a wave in the rest of the country and bring that wave crashing down on their heads. And I'm here tonight to ask you, will you create that wave with me? Yes! Together, we can build a new economy that prioritizes human beings, and we can take this disaster of a presidency and swing it the other direction. We have to have our own vision and have the courage to say, if we invest in ourselves, then we will all win.
Please welcome to the stage
The next president.
The next president
the next president
Of the United States.
of the United States.
Andrew Yang.
Test, test.
Can you hear me at all? Oh, there. Okay. Yeah. No, I can now. Yeah. Yep.
All right. We should be going live here in just a second.
Alrighty.
No, we actually are already live.
What?
Yes. So you
That
can
is
be heard
so
to the masses. You've got 23
fast.
people listening in as you speak.
Holy macaroni and cheese. That's fast.
Indeed.
Can you fire me a link so that I can that and like Facebook that and send it everywhere? Is
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Speaking of which, I'm gonna just hit Welcome to the Moving Forward podcast and the Dividend Report. I just wanted to get that out of the way quickly. We are recording. This is live. We're doing this new fancy thing where we get boosted on the Dividend Report YouTube page.
Live in the wine cave.
Live in the wine cave. Yes. All right. That's
so
fantastic.
Who do you think won that little exchange between Buttigieg and Warren?
Warren all day.
No, I think Buttigieg totally won.
I had a feeling you would feel that way, but that's because you're part of the donor class. You would feel that way.
I literally went to a Christmas party where we were drinking wine like that.
Again, like it makes so much more sense because again, like a good Republican, you are actually espousing your own.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something really interesting. All the people who were at this party, which didn't just have fancy wine, but also had like staff, like a band and like past hors d'oeuvres and all that fun stuff. Not a single one of them voted for Donald Trump. I don't think rich people are the problem.
You're saying that no rich people voted for Donald Trump?
No, I'm just saying those ones didn't. So we can't just assume that because Buttigieg was hanging out with people who like good wine that he's a bad person.
It's the thing. I don't think he's a bad person, but I think Elizabeth Warren's particular way and in other ways has led to the regulatory capture and constant tax breaks for the rich is exactly why income inequality is the problem that it is. Right? I think disconnecting that is not going to help.
Well, as you know, I actually reject that narrative, but that's not the reason why I think Buttigieg won that exchange. I think he won that exchange because he was clearly very well prepared.
He was ready for that.
And he pretty quickly pivoted to, well, I'm the only person on this stage who isn't a millionaire, and you have over 100 times my net worth. I did the math. According to Forbes, he has 120 times his net worth.
That was a good line.
Like the people's champion. I mean, of course, it's easy for her to say as someone who is part of the establishment, who has tons of money coming in, who, as he also said, was able to transfer money from similar fundraisers in her last campaign before she suddenly had a change of heart. For her to attack him over that seemed disingenuous to me, honestly.
Well, it is a huge function and part of the way that she's running her campaign, and she's trying to champion the larger sense of the Democratic Party. But you're right, that part got messy for sure.
Well, that's why I just think he won that exchange in the end, because I mean, and he also said look, you're rich. If you gave me my campaign $2,000, would that mean that I'm now beholden to you and that I'm selling out? No, it would just mean that you could afford to give me $2,000. Yeah. I mean, Andrew Yang does fundraisers like this too.
Well, and that's the thing. I am fully open to being called a hypocrite on this, because while I agree with her position on that, there it is.
Are y'all able to see this? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Hold on, I want to make sure that the YouTube.
That's actually kind of tacky.
It's the money tree.
It's insane.
That looks like something from one of Trump's palaces.
In case you can't see this in the live stream, I need you to go to my Twitter account right now and actually look at this cave, because I agree. I was like, all right, you know what? Yeah, he's accepting money from these people. But really, once I saw this, it looks like a bond layer, It's insane.
I think it looks like high school prom. It's tacky. If you're going to drink wine like that, you should at least decorate it more tasteful.
Oh, my. It's not bougie enough for my buddy Rio. That's fascinating.
No, like I said, I mean, it has that kind of Trump stink to it. It's a little.
Wow. It's like gold-plated toilets everywhere.
It's not classy, no.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. I'm
going to judge Buttigieg, but mostly just for having bad taste.
Wow. I did not see this conversation going that way.
Okay. So first things first, before we dive into the debate, right? Trump got impeached. How does everybody feel about that?
Yeah, good. I mean, I was calling for his impeachment within minutes of his election. So,
how about you, Seth? What's your take on it?
It's really interesting. I mean, I agree with Yang. Like, this is a ball game that everyone understands how it's going to play out. But what I wasn't expecting was the kind of Game of Thrones type political action that's happening after the fact. I didn't see what Pelosi had in mind for what, I don't know. I might be making a bigger deal of it than it is, but she's sitting on the articles of impeachment. It seems like no one was prepared for that. I'm interested to see how this is going to play out.
Well, Pelosi is very smart. He knows exactly what she's doing. She's sitting on them because she wants to try to coerce McConnell into actually having something that at least resembles a real trial in the Senate before she'll, let the process go to the next step. I also agreed with Yang, Seth. I think that, my position is basically exactly what he said in the post-debate interview when he was able to get into it a little bit more. I think that, yes, Trump is impeachable, and it probably wasn't very smart political strategy to do it before the election. I think that people feel like, hey, we have an election coming up. We can decide for ourselves if we think he's a good president. Unfortunately, the average American doesn't understand there's a difference between being a good president, the question of whether someone's a good president or not, and whether or not they committed impeachable offenses. And there's just nothing we can do about that. I mean, it really, in the end, and this is part of the reason I talked about that thing about people who voting for Trump and, not all rich people are bad. And I think in the end, Trump is going to get away with this for one reason only. And that's because too many Americans in too many places think that they're putting their personal policy goals, and even worse than that, their personal desire to win some kind of class war against the elites. They're putting that over the well-being of our democracy and the rule of law. And they have decided that they want a strong man. They want a dictator. They don't want democracy anymore. And that's the message that they send every time they tell pollsters that they don't support removing him. And that's why he's going to get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they constitutionally had to do it. I'm definitely not as convinced that we know how this is going to end as everyone else is. I think that common wisdom is still, more. Is it more than 51% likely to be accurate? Yes, but I think there has even been more things come out just this week. Where Trump is admitting that the reason why he thinks Ukrainians were the one that meddled in the elections is because Putin told him directly. Like, holy can of what the fuck, right? So, and I think the holding on to this stuff and not sending it to McConnell. I mean, there's tons of reasons why Pelosi would do it. I think actually the pragmatically not sending it over because she has to say who she's going to have managing it, right? Not knowing what the playing field is going to be like before you pick your team. That's obvious, right? That's not gamemanship. That's just it would be political malpractice if she did it any other way. But where it could be gamemanship, and I don't disagree with it at all, over Christmas, nobody's going to be paying attention. Right. So if at the very least she just holds it over Christmas and then, as people start plugging in, more to the debates and things that are going to be going on in January, carry this conversation into that. I mean, I would love for this to hang like a lead albatross on every single Republican senator's neck. And it can if managed properly. Right.
And Republicans in districts that Clinton won are going to be in trouble over this. It is going to hurt them.
I'm not 100% sure that's true.
What do you mean by that? That's interesting.
So it should be a concern. Absolutely. But if 2018 taught us anything, is that, the Republican turnout in 2018 was higher than it was in previous years. That should automatically, we should be super worried about that. Here's the problem. Independent and Democratic turnout was way, 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 way higher. Right. So, if you poll independents and Democrats, impeach the motherfucker is the plan, because it's what you should do.
I think you misheard me. Yeah, I mean, it is true that it could also be a problem for Democrats who were in districts that Trump won. But I said Republicans in districts Clinton won.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally got that backwards.
Or even just in districts that changed to Democrat in 2018. Right? Because I'm convinced a big part of the reason for that shift was just because people, especially in the suburbs, were kind of fed up with Trump's horrible behavior, right?
Right. Okay. Sorry. So we're on the same page.
I think it was soccer moms who were just offended by the fact that their kids had to watch the president talk like that.
If that's the only reason, then I'm all for it.
I mean, it's not a bad reason to vote. That's as good as any.
Right.
All right, Seth. So it's your show. I just realized.
Yeah. Right. We're guests and dominating the whole thing.
You have to pull us back as Corey and I get into our rhythm.
No, listen. Hey, to be clear, I don't want to. If you guys are listening in on this, you guys need to move over and listen to some of the Moving Forward podcast, previous shows, and everything. I'm so happy to be doing this live stream and everything, but this is not intended to take the thunder from the Moving Forward podcast. But really, all in all, the debates last night were incredible. I didn't go into it feeling like we were going to get anything new, and really at the end of the day, we didn't. Everyone was watching Star Wars anyways, and no one ever watches these. But there were so many sound bites from every single candidate. I mean, I sat back at one point and said, did Biden just make sense? It was a new night. It was insane.
Yep.
Yeah, but what did you guys think?
That's actually, I said categorically, I think Yang won the debate. I watched a bit of it last night, and I was after many wines, just madly messaging Rio every single thought that I had on it. He was very patient with me. But then watching the rest this morning, I absolutely feel like every single one of the candidates had moments where I was like, man, I'm really glad that you're running in this race. But also every single candidate other than Yang had moments where I was like, please shut up. Like that, there were so many moments where it just seemed weak. And all of that culminated in that last moment with Yang, where he's like, I actually probably the only candidate up here who doesn't have anything to apologize for. That's huge, right? And then Warren admitted she's halfway through reading his book, which is exactly what I thought compared to where her thought has evolved on the automation thing. So I feel like you completely, totally nailed it. But yes, there were specific moments for most of the other candidates. And with Biden, I mean, I feel like Biden's gang, he just hasn't admitted it yet. So he just needs to figure out how to get out of the way.
You know what?
Go ahead, Seth. Sorry.
On that point, I just want to get into this real quick because Warren actually, I mean, I've always never really had a huge problem with Warren, but I don't believe that she's telling the truth that she's halfway through Yang's book because of this. What she says right here, I'm going to do some crazy tech magic, and you guys are going to listen to a small part.
Go on.
This is something she said, and I was just sitting there a little bit like, this is my thing, though, so I shouldn't be surprised at all. Oh, no, this isn't going to work because it's not. You know what? You guys continue. What was your point?
Well, I was about to say, I'm not sure I would go so far as to say that Yang won the debate. I don't think there actually was a clear winner. The second half of the debate was kind of the weak part for me. It was partially because there was less Yang, but also because it was a little muddled. I mean, it wasn't really clear. Like the front runners went at each other's throats. Everybody went after Buttigieg, and I thought he came out. If I was going to list the people who are candidates for having won the debate, I think Buttigieg would be on the list just because I think he did an expert job of defending his position against the people who attacked him. I agree with Corey, of course, that progressives are inclined to side with Warren in that whole exchange, just because of the broader issue at play. But they kind of were already voting for Warren or Sanders anyway, so I don't think they persuaded a lot of Buttigieg voters by attacking him that way they did, especially since he defended himself so well. Mm-hmm. So I think he came out of that really strong. And yes, Yang, I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say he won, but I would say he did as well as anybody else, and it was his best debate. And not only that, but the pundits on CNN seemed to think so. I was shocked the number of times. I mean, they mentioned Yang positively as often, if not more often, than everybody else in the post-debate talks. And that's never happened before.
Someone was saying that this is what happened to Amy Klobuchar before she skyrocketed afterwards. And I'm really hoping that is exactly right, because that would be...
Oh, Van Jones seems to think Yang's going to tick up after this.
Van Jones talking about or asking about the Childish Gambino moment and sort of leading that as a question to there feels like there is a change in momentum. And to Yang's campaign is going to be like, yeah, we already knew this, right? Like we've been watching this exponential rise. We're just entering the knee of the curve right now so that the rest of you can actually see what's going on. And I think we're really going to get into that. And I'm excited to see. I posted this earlier on Twitter. MSNBC is going to have a lot of ground to make up for. in how badly they're screwing this up, and they're going to have to do it. Otherwise, they're going to have a lot of egg on their face. Which
The
is fine.
Democratic
They
Party
deserve
should
it.
the Democratic Party should let Fox host a debate. And MSNBC has, I think, categorically done the worst job so far. Like,
I have to agree. Yeah,
terrible, right? CNN did much better. PBS, apart from a couple of stupid things like calling Steyer Yang, at which point Yang literally had to say, "I'm over here. Hey, I'm over here."
Right? Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was like a very meta moment, considering the way the media has been treated.
Senator Yang.
Well, even when they at the last one, Senator Yang, right? When they went to the very last question, they go to Yang first, and he's like, just pauses. Wow.
Oh my God, that was the dumbest question.
Was so
too.
good.
It was like, what is something in the spirit of the holidays? What is something you would either ask one of the candidates forgiveness for, or a gift you would give one of the other candidates? Not a single candidate actually answered that question because it was a stupid question.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just not talked to Yang for a long time. They went to him first, and I thought Yang's reaction actually was like amazing because it humanized him.
100%.
The audience was laughing. We were all uncomfortable with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What the fuck is he gonna say to that? That is an idiotic question.
But he totally nailed it though, right? Because like the one thing he could say is, I don't have to apologize for anything. I'm likely the only candidate up here who doesn't. Because the rest of them just like the sniping really got old very, very quickly. And I get, and to your point, Rio, thinking about the debate in terms of who maybe moved or was convinced, the likelihood that Warren gained any of Buttigieg's fans and vice versa, that I think that bar is probably really, really low. But again, the person who got the most new Twitter likes during the debate is Andrew Yang. Facebook, the same thing, right? So like, as far as people who are gaining strength and coming to know the Yang gang, I mean, that I think is happening now at a much faster clip than it is for any other candidate.
I've been hearing talk that his book is flying off of the shelves lately. I don't know how true or not that is, but you can also go and get a free, sped up version of the audiobook on YouTube in case you're listening to this and you are Yang curious. Feel free to go and check that out, but also support him.
I didn't know about that. That's awesome.
I was a little bit worried in the moment that when he said, "I'd like to give everybody a copy of my book," that it would seem a little self-serving. Because, like, let's face it, right? If nobody likes the asshole who over Christmas gives everybody his own book.
But
right?
the Warren setup was so perfect, right? Because Warren had bad data on automation, was espousing that bad data. And I firmly believe that she's open to better data, right? And so the fact that she would actually do that, that's a great setup. What was really bad is everyone else mentioning their book after that was weak sauce.
Yeah.
Well, and also it helped Yang because nobody else actually gave anybody a gift, right? It was all like, my gift to the American people will be my presidency.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
way that you do that as a politician is you say, all right, the gift I'm giving you is my book, because you don't know what you're talking about, and it's time for you to actually get caught up on the data and the facts. But him taking the high road, it made him come off like, oh, I'm going to market myself in this moment. But, he does take that high road, and that's what he had to leverage right there, I think.
Right. And then in the end, I think viewers forgive people because it's like you're running for president. You're on stage. Your job is to sell yourself. So, I mean, you're kind of supposed to toot your own horn. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the job. Welcome to the debate.
So how do we think about how Sanders did? I thought he was kind of forgettable in this debate, honestly. Like, I don't think he did a poor job. It's just it was more of the same, and he didn't really stand out.
Yeah, I agree. His yelling really annoyed me. That's literally all I have to say about and Bernie too. He had some moments that where I would agree, but I think because I spend so much time paying attention to not only what Andrew Yang says but how he says it, the difference is something that really strikes out at me now. Like that contrast is something that is irritating now.
So surprisingly, I think this is an amalgamation or a consequence of Bernie moving the Overton window in 2016. Now each of the candidates has gone a little bit more towards Bernie. And it's almost like each of them has something that Bernie had in 2016, and they've latched onto it and they've made that their running movement. Especially with Warren kind of in her Buttigieg interaction, I was like, this is directly because of Bernie Sanders. If he hadn't have made this an issue, and I remember thinking like, this is what I was wishing that Bernie would have been, and he did, to Hillary Clinton. And I was also wondering why Hillary Clinton appeared to be different in my mind than Buttigieg almost. Like, I can let Buttigieg get away with the wine cave or whatever. And I think that's just indicative of how successful the Republicans were in continually attacking Clinton for decades. And now we're dealing with the same things, but it's coming off in this different light during these debates with all of these different candidates. And Bernie does seem to kind of fade into the background. He's got to work so much harder to make himself stand out because all of his points. I think the one moment that I was super interested in was when Yang got finished with his talk on what it was like to be the only candidate on stage as a minority. And he finishes that and they ask Bernie, and Bernie goes, I want to talk about that.
No, he turned to climate.
Climate change.
He, like, I was watching all day, you know, the posts that were coming out before the debate about how, you know, he, you know, and again, like, I think I know Bernie's hard on this, and I don't think it's bad. Right. Like, he's out protesting, you know, this with the civil rights movement back in the day or whatever. You know, whatever he's trying to do now, he's trying to like thread the needle or whatever he's doing. It's not working on the race question, right? He's an old white man. And he even brought it up later on, like, but like to pivot away from that question to climate change, and then had to get dragged back as the old white man in the most diverse, well, the only diverse party in American politics. It was bad. It was a really, really bad look. And then, you know, later on, he was kind of doing it the same thing. He's bringing up the fact that he's old and that he's white and he's not a woman. And he goes, I'm white. Like, he offers it, right? Like, and yeah, like, I guess if you're threading a really, really fine needle, like, I don't understand how you think that will be somehow compelling. It just wasn't to me.
Yeah, he fumbled the ball there, and it's very clear that Bernie, he very, very much cares about, you know, racial equality and everything like that. I don't see how he made that mistake. I mean, Yang was literally just finishing talking about Martin Luther King's vision for a basic income, a powerful. Right. He took that, and I think that was the highlight of Yang's entire night. He took that question and just fused every single part that I wanted him to talk about. Everything about how, you know, okay. So one of Bernie's people on Twitter, I forget exactly her place on his campaign, but she brought up a good point. She said, "Listen, climate justice is racial justice." But economic justice is racial justice too. And Yang was pushing that forward, and he started on it, ended on it very strong. There were boos in the audience.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah,
it was rough. And again, sorry, Rio, go ahead.
Directed at Sanders.
Yeah.
No, I also agree that was. I mean, in a debate that was by far Yang's strongest debate, you could tell that as he's gotten more money, and as he's ticked up in the polls, that he's getting better professionals on his campaign. I think he has like the best debate coaches that are in the business. Honestly, I really think he does. I think that they knew that question was coming, and he did, like you said, Seth. He did everything you would want him to do. I was so happy. I was elated. I would not have changed a single word of that response, because he acknowledged that, you know, his own experience as an Asian man is relevant, and that he you know, it you know, the fact that he was the only person of color on that stage, you know, was significant. And, you know, so he owned his own experience and his dealing with racism and stuff in a way. He acknowledged it in a way that helped him to kind of claim that identity politics mantle, which is a very important thing in the Democratic primary. But then he did the next thing, which is like, to point out that his experience isn't as bad as those of a lot of like Black and Latino people, and then pulled out statistics to back that up. So he looked really informed, and he was signaling to, you know, I guess some people would call less privileged races that, you know, it's not, I'm not speaking for you. I understand you have it worse than me. And I mean, and it was just perfect. And then he pivoted to the freedom dividend by saying, look, part of the reason I'm the only person of color up here is because people can't afford to donate to campaigns. If we gave them a freedom dividend and some democracy dollars, actually, that is one thing I would have changed. I would have mentioned the democracy dollars, but maybe he chose.
He had already mentioned it not long before, but reminding it again, I would have been cool with more, because it's a
although not everybody is as steeped in the details of his policies as you and I are, Corey. So he probably left it out just to avoid getting confusing, right? Right.
The
basic point was like, let's give people some money so that they can actually like donate to campaigns and see people they want. Now, I think that he did everything perfectly, and that is going to help his campaign enormously. I also find I'm looking at it from a very cynical perspective, because you're right, Corey. The Democratic Party is the most diverse party, but
well, only right. I mean, there's only two. The other one is not.
At this point, I know, but optics matter.
Yep.
And at this point in the Republican primary last time, they had a more diverse field. And
that's true.
It's just weird. And there are a lot more black voters in the Democratic Party, and they're rejecting through the polls the black candidates. The black voters are going for they're going for Biden primarily is their first choice. So I don't think that. While I think that Yang's answer was perfectly catered to his audience and was perfect genius politics, and made it about an important policy issue that I completely agree with, I'm a little cynical about what's going on around it because I don't quite buy the narrative that people of color aren't being heard. I think they're just choosing white people because people of color, shock and awe, like race isn't the only thing they care about.
I think the fact that Yang is the candidate of color on stage says that maybe it's not so much so because Yang doesn't have any political experience. He is a person of color. I think that it does say, we want and desire diversity on stage, but we do desire good policy and a vision for the future more than that. That's my hope is that because honestly, I mean, that's exactly what Yang's got going for him, in my opinion.
Yeah. I just want to hit, I was on the YouTube thing. I just got, I'm just checking the comments here. Nikolai said, so they're saying Yang's going to have a hard time getting into the next debate. And a few people, I think William was talking about the fact that he feels like there's a bit of a tipping point going on. I absolutely think that's the case. The likelihood, and again, like it's probably going to be an uphill battle to make the next debate, but I think we're going to start seeing some really, really interesting things. Well, I mean, I keep going back to this Childish Gambino thing because I'm like a ridiculous fanboy, but it's got that the pop culture sort of supercharging potential vibe that I feel like the campaign is ready for, right? Like the campaign's very much, in my opinion, ready for the prime time, and the prime time might finally be figuring their shit out and catching up.
What was this
I hope
news?
so.
Donald Glover is now the creative consultant for Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang's campaign.
Yep.
Yeah, boy.
This is America.
He's a smart guy. That's great.
Dude.
Yeah, I was kind of sad that I wasn't in LA because he just randomly announced it in total Childish Gambino style. It was just on his Instagram. Oh, by the way, I'm going to have a spontaneous fundraiser for Andrew Yang tomorrow at noon. You're all invited. He sends out on Instagram to millions of followers. That guy is remarkable. So we talked about Sanders. Oh, actually, I just realized we didn't one thing that blew my mind as I was watching, just gearing up to watch the debate. I didn't get to see all of the pre-debate talk. I came to the pre-debate talk a little late because I started out watching it on PBS, and I was like, "What's going on?" It was this weird, modern, contemporary, remake of Peanuts. It was a children's show. Yeah, that's what was on PBS before the debate. And so I switched over to CNN and I was like, okay, they're having proper pre-debate talk. So I missed most of it. But I came just in time to hear, I think it was Van Jones say, and this is the words said right before the debate started. He said, I'm telling you guys, listen to Andrew Yang tonight. He's new. He has new ideas, and he's going to give the party a chance for a fresh start. That was his introduction to the debate. My jaw hit the floor. I was like, yes. Wow. The media coverage for Yang could not have been better in that moment.
Agreed. Well, even after, right? I mean, that the and Van Jones has kind of always been Yang Gang, but he's very, very good at it as well. And sitting with the panel with CNN afterwards, they're just having a really, really good conversation. I always go. So David Axelrod was Obama's campaign manager, right?
Yep.
Huge in Obama land, and had Yang on his podcast. Which was a really, really good conversation. That fascinates me because we're talking about the central establishment guard of Obama era politics, and they have their eye on him as well, right? So that to me is extremely.
I hope so. I honestly think that Obama should just endorse Yang. Really,
He can't.
I understand why he doesn't want to, because he doesn't want to feel like he doesn't want to be accused of like putting his thumb on the scale too early.
Right.
All of that.
Yeah.
And people are overly sensitive about all of that stuff. This actually relates to the topic of the wine cave. I'm actually drinking coffee, and I did not put Bailey's in it this morning. I was thinking like it's a little early for wine, but maybe Bailey's, and then I decided at the last second not to do that.
I just have a cup of Bailey's because I figure I actually have some.
If you think about it, the substance of not just that one attack of Warren's, but like the overall kind of populist hatred of Pete Buttigieg really boils down primarily to like culture issues, right? I see people on Twitter like saying, you know, they're putting out memes of Buttigieg supposedly saying things like, "Oh, that guy probably flies coach," right? Like, meanwhile, Buttigieg might be the only guy on the stage who does fly coach. Yang probably does too, because he's actually not that rich. But like most of them are a lot richer than him, right? And so it's not actually about money. It's about people not liking people who have highbrow taste, you know, or they not liking people who went to Ivy League schools, which again also applies to Warren, right?
Yeah.
So, like it's there's something weird going on there, and I think that I'm trying. One of the themes going through our show is that I've been trying to help Corey kind of see the strangeness of this populist narrative that's going around, right? Because like it's not that I'm not sympathetic with some of the policy goals of some of those people. It's just the way that populists go about it, where they do exactly what Trump does, and they try to tap into these stupid little cultural wars that divide Americans. I don't think that's healthy for democracy.
All right. Well, I guess what I'd say there, and this is what I love most about Yang, because he's just doing it with really, really smart policy, right? This is why it's better. But the income inequality thing that I keep trying to, calmly and peacefully explain to my dear buddy Rio, as one of the fundamental problems of our time. That is the way to communicate that to people. And well, it's not the way. It's the way that it's been done previously, right? Which is where you have, blaming rich people and billionaires for all the world's problems. And I mean, the thing is, like, Steyer is willing to do the same thing, which is really, really funny to me. But Yang just comes out and says, well, okay, if he even says that, here's how we solve it. And he constantly goes back to here's how we solve it, right? Like, income inequality is what's leading to all of this very, very righteous, in my opinion, anger. But so what? Like, fine, you're angry, right? Now what? What are you going to do about it?
Exactly. Like, channel that frustration to something more positive. And I actually think that anger is it's not just misplaced, but I think it's inappropriate. If we could get Steven Pinker on the show, which is not impossible. Like, he goes on all kinds of stuff all the time. I should probably try to get him. But like, I don't know if do you read Enlightenment now?
I've read it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I personally thought that, backed up with massive amounts of data, and Corey's wearing a math hat right now. So Corey, my challenge to you is go read that book, because you can't argue with data. Massive amounts of data. He proves not that the world is a perfect utopia, because it never will be, right?
Right.
But that we actually are living in the most peaceful, prosperous, like, time in human history. And so I just personally
globally,
yes, not just globally, but also that, the picture is a little bit more complicated than that, because income inequality globally is actually shrinking very fast. And it's actually the lowest it's ever been. But what's going on is that because of the fact that middle-class people in the first world now have to compete with working and middle-class people in the third world, right? The average person in rich countries the average middle-class person in rich countries isn't getting rich as fast as the average person in developing countries. But, that's just part of the game of capitalism, right? And so, like, I think the idea that that's the fault of some elite is just kind of missing the point, right? That's part of the reason.
Okay.
Well, let me finish. So part of the reason I like Yang's message is because he always makes it about saying we have to realign incentives or something like that, right? Because, like Trump's message is, well, the way I'm going to help the American middle class is that I'm going to change the rules of capitalism so that they don't have to compete with working people in third world countries because we don't care about them because they're brown, and they don't have to compete with immigrants and who from brown countries, and we don't care about them because they're brown, right? That's his solution is to say, like, I'm going to rig the rules in your favor, you white Americans. That's one way to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's real, but like, and I think that you have to believe that Trump's solution is the right solution to blame elites, because otherwise, what did the elites do wrong? They're just letting the rules of capitalism play out.
Well, Trump's the one thing he did right was tap into the very real pain, right? There is economic pain, real economic pain being suffered in America. Comparative analysis between that and Zimbabwe is not relevant to somebody who's working 3 jobs and can't pay for insulin. It literally doesn't matter, right? So I have read the Steven Pinker book. I absolutely love his. I have seen all of his TED Talks, and I love them, right? But when all of the industrialized nations have included healthcare in their social construct, and we can't do that to save our own lives while spending 3 times more than any other country, it's just ridiculous, right? And the reason why that is that people that are in power, billionaires and millionaires, have been buying themselves more shit in this country for 40 years. Right. That is an incontrovertible fact. Now, I'm all for figuring out how to solve for that, but you just blithely saying that, like, poor people shouldn't be fucking. Why are you even so worried? Steven Pinker said the world is fine. Like, what's wrong with you? And honestly, and this is what you said, if you're losing, it's just capitalism, right? Like that is an economic argument in the United States. It's not going to work. Well, there's real anger, and that anger is deserved.
But look at Yang's proposed solution is to raise the floor by creating a fair income that doesn't start at zero. Right?
We agree on the solution, but you're constantly trying to say the problem doesn't exist.
Yes. Notice what he doesn't do is say, like, oh, the Bernie Sanders thing. Oh, well, it's the fault of elites because they signed these trade deals and allowed people to outsource your jobs. Right?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm saying Yang is better.
He doesn't even blame companies for doing automation. He says automation is a good thing. So I'm just saying, like, notice the difference between the way that Yang talks about realigning incentives in fair ways and contrast that with the way populists of all stripes talk. Not just in terms of their rhetoric, but in terms of the solution.
I do agree fundamentally. Like, and again, in a universe with Yang, it's very, very easy to see that Yang is better, right? To me,
yeah. Thank God he's here, because otherwise I would just be like, I guess I would be very enthusiastically Buttigieg, but not as enthusiastically Buttigieg. Like, I wouldn't have started a podcast about him,
Right?
So
yeah, it's not that.
I would have just voted for the guy, and that would have been that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe host a wine party and just be done with it.
This is another symptom.
So how do we think
mindset.
Klobuchar did?
Seth, you were just saying that this is another example of the scarcity mindset.
Yeah, my mic has been kind of messing up all day. Is it working okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So I just wanted to quickly kind of say, like, this is just another reason of, this division is not just among poor people or xenophobia. It also, it divides through class lines. And I can see the class war is going to continue ramping up more and more as the middle class continues to shrink. And they asked a question about this in the debates where they were like, the economy, by all accounts, seems to be doing very well. How do you explain to the American people why we need this kind of systemic change from the ground up and everything? And every single person had some things very interesting to say. I think this is where Biden kind of said some stuff where I was like, whoa, he talked about solar batteries, and I thought I was losing my mind.
Right? Who are you, old man?
I know. Good. I bet what happened was, like, he was being led around, and he came across like a podium looking thing and started trying to give a speech stump, and they were like, no, Biden, that's a battery, and he had to figure out what it was. But anyways, at this point, I'm pretty sure that this is where Buttigieg says the simple fact of America is that there's not a single place in this country where minimum wage can afford you a 1-room apartment, 2-room apartment, and the simple fact is that Americans are not being paid enough. That's the problem. And I thought, yeah, you know what? That's actually a very important thing that you need to say. And then he's saying, the solution is to raise the minimum wage. And I'm thinking Yang has to come in at this point and say, we're not actually talking about these problems that, the politics of old, the policy of old could have fixed. We are still stuck in the past tense ways of trying to think about these overarching populisms, that problems that populism has approached before, and maybe it won, maybe it didn't, and we've moved beyond it. Here we're dealing with new variables. These variables, I think, in Enlightenment now are the things that we must be critically focused on because they change the game in dramatic ways. Yes, things are different in the first world. The first world is dealing with problems that like it's never seen before. And the more and more that happens, the more division will occur, the more we keep on looking backwards at immigrants, at people stealing our jobs. Like when Bernie was saying that's not going to stop them from outsourcing. I was like, you're damn right it's not. You're acknowledging a very real problem. And he's saying we need good trade deals and agreement. The thing is that the end result of trade, of globalization, is labor being done at cheaper costs. The end goal of automation, which isn't defined by geographic location, national location, is the same thing. You're going to have lower cost of labor. That's the new rot and corruption that we are dealing with, and we have to address that because none of them are able to see it. And that's like, I need Yang to come through and boost in and say, listen, you know what? Everyone's almost making $9 an hour now. I say, I mean, I live in kind of rural South, and I see people hiring for $9, which is insane. My freedom dividend is effectively a $6.15 wage. I want to say I am dealing with the real solutions. How long is it going to take you to get a minimum wage through? How many years of slow incremental increases up to that wage are we going to deal with? Like, boost through there, man. Like, don't take the gloves off yet, I guess. He said it before that he will at some certain point, but he has to say, like, you guys are all talking about the wrong things without coming across, I guess, as a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist.
I'm actually torn on that one because if I was going to offer one constructive criticism of Yang's performance, I would have said basically what you just said, which is that, and I have been saying this all along after every debate, I think he needs to be more part of the conversation. He needs to talk to the other candidates and respond to the other candidates. And I think that he needs to find a middle way of doing that without attacking them, because I do think it's too early to attack them. I think that it played only to his advantage that the front runners were all going after each other, and that most of the second tier candidates were all going after the front runners, and nobody was going after him, because that meant that when he did land extremely good answers, spaced throughout the debate, that they were able to just reach his audience and didn't turn into a negative exchange that could end up making both sides look worse. So I think he's right not to attack them yet. So he needs to try to find a way to respond to other candidates and really engage in more of a conversation. There was a little bit of that, and actually that incredibly stupid question about the holiday spirit. Oh my God. Was also kind of a gift to him in a way, because it forced him to actually interact with another candidate a little bit. And he talked to Elizabeth Warren for half a second there. That was good.
Yeah, worked for me.
Yeah. By the way, I agree with you, Seth, that most of the candidates had a very good answer to that question about why, the economy doing as well as it is, given how well it's doing, why do we need all of these radical policies? He answered, Yang's answer, I thought was still the best though.
Yeah.
Because, he basically made a pitch for his human capitalism approach by saying, GD, the simple fact is, this is practically a quote. The simple fact is, the low unemployment rate and GDP have no real impact on the lived experience of people on the ground. And then he went on to elaborate why that's so. People are working multiple jobs, et cetera. And that is a message that Trump, said while he was running last time around. And then he did nothing about it, right? But not only did he do nothing about it, but now he says, keep America great. I already solved all of our problems. Never mind the fact that the criticisms he's making are still true, right? But Corey, I wanted to respond a little bit to what you were saying, but I'm glad that you read Enlightenment Now. So facts are facts, right? Data is data. And, maybe go back and reread a couple of the chapters about the first world and the middle class and stuff too, because the situation is also not as dire as some populists would have us think. Part of the reason the middle class is shrinking is because a lot of the people who were in the middle class, there's actually like a growing upper class. There's more people who are reaching the capitalist class and who are no longer having to work for a living, white collar or otherwise, and that's only a good thing. And poor people, Pinker also makes an extremely data backed up argument for the fact that poor people, in terms of like their quality of life, has also never been better in the United States, specifically because we have excellent social welfare programs that like, it's not like we've gutted the social safety net recently. We have these great social welfare programs, and we have lots of technologies that make their lives significantly better. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's a utopia, right? Nor will it ever be. And Yang's vision would only improve on the status quo, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But to the people who say like, oh, the sky is falling, things are so bad, we might as well, send a lunatic to Washington and blow up the system because that's what those elites have been coming to them. Fuck democracy and fuck the rule of law. I don't have any sympathy for those people because they are spoiled. They have no idea how bad the world could be if they think it couldn't get any worse. That is not true.
I think the problem with that,
it could get a lot worse.
The problem with that is
all of human history, it has been worse.
Yeah, that is true, but you're still
they
expecting
inherited
us to be
a goose that lays a golden egg, and they want to chop its head off because it doesn't lay two.
But here's the thing, like automatically industrialized nation on the face of the earth.
I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying it's not so bad that we should blow it all up.
Well, that one statement isolated is perfectly accurate and true.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
The thing with me is that, this is all relative. You could turn to a poor person in Flint, Michigan, who's, their kids are drinking lead water, and say, well, listen, people in Africa have it so much worse. The problem is you just can't expect people who are in their relative own problems, and especially if they feel like they're taking steps back from the generation before them. These are, that's the thing, is you always need to try and strive for progress, never work backwards. And, when you think of the Yellow Vest riots, you think of Brexit, you think of Trump, you think of Build the Wall. All of these things, in my opinion, are sure, yes, there needs to be a healthy dose of, well, look at where you are, look at how bad it could be. Sure, that's always necessary. But the issue, I think, is that at the same time, abundance, true technological wealth and abundance is just flying right past us in a way that it's like all of these systemic populist tensions in ways that are kind of indicative of the disturbing global events that happened before the First World War, these types of trends that the Industrial Revolution back then, it just kind of uproots things people are used to, right? It could be the path to something so much better, like a service-based economy in which the middle class explodes and everyone's having healthier and happier lives. But that transition point can be an acute moment of real, that's the issue. I would agree, if something were to happen, if a keg went off and one thing happened to take everything down, it would be tragic because we do have so much to be very, very hopeful for. I don't know. Like, I'm kind of halfway in the middle of both of you right now, it feels like.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people land in the middle between us because we actually, like, in a normal election where it was just, like, classic liberals, which is the real meaning of the word conservative, and social liberals, which is the traditional meaning of the word progressive. Like, if we were in a normal Overton window of American politics and not this weird authoritarian era that Trump has ushered us into, Corey and I would really kind of be polar opposites on that spectrum. So I don't know, maybe the silver lining is that Trump's daily attempts to destroy our democracy are forcing people who used to be at each other's throats to come together and rediscover the values they have in common, like democracy and capitalism and human rights. Okay.
Yeah, all the stuff we didn't think we had to say out loud.
Right.
Now,
by the way,
we got to say this shit out loud.
Yeah, but one of Yang's answers got right to the heart of everything that you just said when he said, like, you guys, we are going through the greatest economic shift in history right now, and DC is out to lunch on this.
Yep.
And the pundits on CNN totally picked up on that afterward.
Yeah.
During the middle discussion in the middle. And then also afterward, one of them actually said, like, Yang has a 21st century vision of the economy, and it really makes him stand out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'd also like to just mention something I saw in the chat from Ira, who mentioned the point that I was trying to get earlier, where Warren was saying this 2% wealth tax is going to allow mommies and daddies to be able to afford childcare for their kids, and they'll be able to work harder, longer jobs. And it was this weird moment of I was like, this vision that she seems to be like really pushing for is the exact opposite of what I love from what Yang is saying, is that she seems to be saying like, you're not working hard enough or something. Like, why would that be something that she's so interested in pushing forward? I want to automate as much as we can and free people up to do things that they're passionate about. I don't want to have to pay for my kids to have childcare from a nanny or something. I want to be able to be free to take care of the kid myself. That just blew my mind completely, and it really bothered me, because that's my entire thing is I want a technological candidate who's going to say, this is the ways in which you are going to be better off. This is the ways in which your generations after you will be able to have more vacations. They'll be able to be, yeah, sure, GDP is going up and everything, but we're going to measure this on happiness. We're going to do the American scorecard. You'll have more time away from work if you so choose. No one is stopping anyone from working harder right now.
Right.
I don't think that's a problem to me. And if, I'm totally into VR. If you really like being in an office and you don't want it to be automated, we will simulate an office reality for you, right? Like that's my, like, no, you can play Job Simulator right now.
Yeah, no, I know, it's a thing.
Like, I don't see why that needs to be a focus, in my opinion. Let's change the focus around.
Can I touch on this one? Just because my brother's going through this right now, right? His soon-to-be ex-wife is working, but there's almost no reason why she would work. Like the amount that she has to pay for childcare for his 2, 4 and 5-year-old kids is 90% of her wage. Which is nuts. So Warren is speaking to those people that are just completely and totally not getting by because of this, right? And what I love most about the freedom dividend is that it solves both of these things and leaves you options to do whatever the fuck you want to do, right? So not only are you getting enough to pay for that childcare if you want to have a career, which every woman or a person, stay-at-home dad, if he is doing that or whatever, you should be encouraged and allowed to do that if that's something you're passionate about and you want to do. Yeah. But if not, here's your $1,000 or for a couple $2,000 to stay home and raise your kids for yourself. And outcomes for those kids, I think almost unilaterally we find that they're way better, and it increases. Even Rio, who's never going to have kids and like kind of secretly hates everyone who does. Society is going to actually get a lot better because those outcomes over time. No, I'm totally kidding. But no, like that it benefits all society if parents decide to stay home and spend a lot of time with their kids. Like that's just a thing that redounds to the rest of us, which is amazing.
Yeah, one of Yang's answers made that exact point. It was actually, he was asked about special needs kids, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things he said is we need to stop confusing economic worth with human worth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
beautiful.
I think that Seth's point there, contrasting Yang with the others in terms of policy solutions, this is something that keeps coming up on our show that Corey and I keep talking about. Corey likes to give people the benefit of the doubt when it comes to ideology. I tend to
does not.
I tend you do in the sense that you'll try to say like, oh, I don't think that they're doing it because they have this or that ideology. Right. I think that they must, right? Because like there's a reason that most Democrats, the mainstream of the Democratic Party today, prefers top-down state solutions where the government takes more money from the American people and then spends it benevolently on their behalf, right? And Yang wants the exact opposite of that. He wants to basically give the largest middle-class tax cut in history, right? And just let people solve their own problems,
right?
And reform the safety net so that people aren't dependent on the government anymore, so that they can finally escape poverty and start building their own independent wealth. The difference between those two solutions has to be because of philosophical disagreements. And it has to be because of the fact that Yang really believes in capitalism and so many of the others don't. They just really fundamentally what it comes down to. Like on the question of, Americans need to get paid more. Okay, well, if your solution to that is to force companies to pay people more than they're worth, right? Or force companies, what are you going to do then when they start automating? Are you also going to force them to employ people they don't even need?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the federal jobs guarantee, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Those solutions are all authoritarian, and they're all coming down with a huge hammer of the federal government and intervening in the market on behalf of some vision that people have to justify their existence through labor.
I've heard
like
some people
maybe
say
labor is becoming obsolete, and maybe that's a
And I think it's institutional momentum, right? Like I think it's just a lack of imagination, not some ideological bent towards authoritarianism, right?
I think it's both. Yeah.
Right. Like it once, and this is the thing, I think what Yang is doing right now is well, and he's already done, right? Like it has become a thing that universal basic income is now something that you can talk about in the same way as Medicare for all or anything else. People are starting to figure it out. People are starting to learn about it. The VAT tax or whatever. It's like that stuff has become part of the conversation and probably won't go away until it happens. I've been saying this for 4 years. UBI is inevitable because of automation and all these other things, right? It really feels like to me like the ideas people are espousing have been in the Overton window longer. An Elizabeth Warren can talk to a supporter in Iowa about these different things because it's a conversation that they can have. They're carrying that same language because of that institutional momentum of these are the ways that we've been doing things in the past. And I honestly believe that she can't even imagine that yet what $1,000 a month would be doing for every single person in America. And once that starts to break through, it has to change the conversation.
Well, she's got a $12 million nest egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't understand what that money means. Like, that's why she's not an effective champion of the people. She doesn't know the first thing about how the actual average person's life is.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
true.
Yang needs to
like,
push
I get
forward
that
and
she
say,
came from like middle class background, but that was a long time ago. She's not a young person.
Yang
And the
needs to
economy
say-
is a very different place now.
I mean, she is operating on, at the very latest 1990s economic data like that. So I concede that completely.
But even the 1990s economic data, this is what I don't get is like when kudos for Buttigieg because he was the first one to finally do this. I don't know if y'all watched the Poor People's Forum way back before the first debate, but it was really, really good. They were talking about like how poverty is never ever spoken about during the debates. You never hear people talk about anything other than the middle class, anything other than taxing the rich. Poor people go unnoticed because it doesn't pay. It doesn't pay to cater to poor people because they're not going to be giving you money as a candidate. And kudos to Buttigieg. He was the first one who said we never talk about this during the debates. And that's like, I think right after that, he says something about raising the minimum wage. That's when this is Yang's entire angle. Exactly what you just said, Rio. He needs to push forward and say, yes, let's raise the minimum wage. But how is that going to fix poverty? There are 13 million Americans right now living in poverty, completely missed by our existing means-tested welfare. How is what you're saying?
Yes.
He has to push forward and say 4 out of 5 people on disability are having to compete with people who are able and willing to work. Why? Why do they just not get the help that they need? There's an entire voice of people who's being missed out on this debate stage right now, and none of your answers until they can address why that is going to help them are valid.
Yeah, somebody has to send this to the Yang. Like Seth just nailed it, right? The number of poor people that are being completely and totally missed by the social safety net. That all of my progressive friends are screaming that Yang is trying to kill with a Trojan horse. Sit the fuck down, because it's ridiculous.
And it
Welfare is not helping the vast majority of people that need that help, and it is completely and totally unethical and malpractice as a human being to ignore that and not do something that's smarter that's going to benefit everyone. It just it has to be part of the campaign.
I'm convinced that the people who are making that argument come from two camps. Either they are actual socialists, right? Which like a lot of Sanders's base really are. I know this because they tell me. and not because they're using it incorrectly, but because they'll say things like, I actually want capitalism to fail, right? Because then you're so like that's crazy, right? But most of them really, I think, are doing more of like the Trumpkin thing of it's just, they really bought into this cult of personality around Bernie Sanders, and they are going to like go down with the ship on that. It is very much like arguing with a Trump supporter, because you can just tell that they are emotionally committed to this guy. He got screwed by the DNC establishment last time, and by golly, he's going to win this time no matter what. And they just don't care about the fact that his ideas suck. I mean, the federal jobs guarantee is terrible. It's
bad.
Terrible.
Admitted.
They attack Yang for supposedly not having a robust enough plan for how to pay for the freedom dividend, which is totally not true. They spread the lie that he's going to try to do away with the social safety net when he clearly says in his policy that he's not going to force anybody off of welfare. He's going to give them a choice that they don't have right now, right? Which is a good thing, right? But meanwhile, Bernie has no plan for how to pay for the federal jobs guarantee, which is going to cost a fortune. And the healthcare bill that he proposes, which is very expensive, he attacks Warren for having a plan for how to pay for it because he doesn't like her plan, but he has no alternative other than just to say, like, yes, taxes will go up, but don't worry because costs will go down. All right, show us the numbers. He's not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to show the numbers on that. I do have to say, Biden using a Republican talking point to go after Biden on the Medicare for All thing, though, was weak sauce. Like very, very weak sauce. Oh, your thing is going to cost $30 trillion. Well, even the Republican funded study on that said that not doing it's going to cost 40. Right. So like it's completely disingenuous. And honestly, the only thing you're protecting there is profits for insurance companies.
100%.
Did you guys say that you thought overall Biden did pretty well? I mean, I was torn on that.
Moments.
He had moments.
It was kind of his best debate in some ways.
Well, maybe because he didn't have moments.
He had some answers that just seemed convoluted to me. And I remember just feeling like this vague sense that he's just not up to the task.
I've always felt that because, I mean, you had to see was him trying to run for president any other time to realize he's not up for the task. He's genuinely bad at this. Like that, he just is. He always has been.
So
who have we not talked to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Seth.
My bar for him having moments was just the simple fact that he was reaching the point where he was like identifying problems. The point where all the other candidates I have normally gone, okay, yeah, that's true, but what does that do about anything? He was finally starting to say, oh yeah, we should do something about this, and I was like, hats off to Biden because he got it. But that was it for sure. And anyways, your question about who we haven't covered as of so far is obviously Tom Steyer and Klobuchar, I believe, as well. So
okay, so I mean, I thought Klobuchar did really well.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a situation where like I would actually be fine with Buttigieg or Klobuchar as president. I'm not so sure that either of them could actually win the general election against Trump, though. And unfortunately, I'm feeling more and more like if it's not Yang, the candidates who I would be less comfortable with being president actually have a better chance of beating him, right? Because the average American is an idiot. But like, I mean, you got to win, right? You need people to vote for you. So like, that's the ball game, right?
It's real.
Even like Elizabeth Warren, who doesn't poll great against Trump nationally, I'm feeling like she has a pretty good shot in the Electoral College because she does very well in these like white working class swing districts.
Yeah, I think this is not a popular opinion of mine. Any single one of these Democrats is going to kill Trump. Any one of them. And that is like understanding a cursory look at how the demographic played out nationally in 2018. Nothing is going to save him.
But there are
I could be wrong.
Electoral college is a thing, though, and
no, I know. But in the electoral college states,
there's two Americas.
Those things have already shifted.
There's two Americas.
Yeah.
There are those of us who live in a democracy, a democratic republic called the United States of America, and then there are people who live in Trumpistan, which is a dictatorship that's allied with Russia, or actually probably a puppet of Russia, and they're okay with it. Right. That's the problem. There are too many people in just the right places who have decided to give up on democracy. And you can just sense it in the arguments. I was just talking to one of them last night after the debate because I was just tweeting out happy thoughts about Andrew Yang, and this guy with a math hat comes in and starts defending Trump out of the blue, and it just pissed me off.
That's fucked up.
I told him, you're a traitor. I'm going to ban you and stop wearing the math hat because you are not Yang Gang. I'm sorry. Trump is the worst president ever. He's so bad. But even if he were the best president ever, he would still need to be impeached because he committed impeachable offenses, and that's the standard, not whether or not we like the guy or whether or not we've, tethered our boat to him because, and Corey, this goes back to the ongoing conversation we're having about populism and why I'm not super sympathetic to it. A lot of Trump voters specifically, I'm not talking about poor Democrats now, okay? I'm just talking about like working class and lower middle class Trump voters. A lot of those people the real thing that pisses them off isn't that they're doing that much worse than they were 10 years ago. It's that black people and women are doing better than them, and they can't stand it.
That's real.
Disgusting. It's disgusting.
It really, really is. And it's the thing to a working class white person in America, equality is going to feel genuinely like loss to them, right? And it's not fair. And I would urge them to honestly sit the fuck down anyway and just take it like a man, you poor little bastard. Because that's the thing. Your life is not getting that much worse. Just other people are starting to do a little bit better, and that's okay.
This is a hard pill for me to swallow because one of my entire things is let's look at Alaska. Let's see how the basic income is viewed there. And it's no longer this moralistic thing of these people are getting something and I'm not. These are parasites. Right. And it seems like there's almost kind of a unity across the aisle in a political sense about the idea of a basic income. But, let's be honest, the basic income is going to disproportionately affect minority communities, blacks, Latinos, and it's if what you're saying is true, if that is a metric by which a majority of people in this country are judging their populist feelings off of.
A majority of Trump supporters, like the left-wing Trump supporters who helped him win the primary, which is about 30% of the GOP electorate, that's what I'm talking about. But I mean, they played a huge role.
Yeah. Let me explain a little bit of why. Never mind that the impeachment thing is going to be hanging around Trump's neck, and he's going to keep fucking up, frankly, for the next year, because he will. In Michigan, that at one of his last rallies, Trump started basically talking about Representative Dingell, who passed away, who's the longest serving representative. Basically suggests that the guy was in hell. It's just Trump being Trump, right? We all know he's a raging asshole, but he was really pouring it on. So his wife just recently won re-election in his district to get his seat, and she won that election by 110,000 votes, right? So that just her district, not all of Michigan. He won Michigan by 10,000 votes, right? So in 2018, the amount of turnout disparity specifically in the swing states that got him the Electoral College, going back to that specific argument, was massive, truly insanely massive. And if we have Yang as any part of this campaign whatsoever, right? Yeah. And I think that the Democrats running, whether it's Warren or even Bernie Sanders, who is unilaterally popular in all of those swing states, by the way, right? Whether or not we agree with him, he's got the ability to win, and Biden and I think everybody else would figure it out. Trump's going into this with a deficit that will not allow him to win a close election. And a close election is the best that he could ever hope for.
Yeah, but he has a huge war chest, and this is also a place where Buttigieg, I'm so happy that he was there to defend this position. Trump has a $300 million war chest, and he has over $1 billion total, including super PACs. They're going to be spending money on his behalf, and who knows how much money Russia's willing to spend to help him.
Or in kind. Yeah, that's the thing.
Trump even publicly said that he wouldn't be surprised if North Korea tried to interfere in the election because, quote, I have a great relationship with Kim Jong-un. I mean, this guy is, oh my God. Okay, so the timeline is so drunk, and this is something else I was arguing with a math hat wearing Trump supporter last night. But we're talking about the Republican Party here. We're talking about the party that won the Cold War. We're talking about the party that stood up for defending democracy and overturning communist dictatorships, right? That party is now a national socialist, anti-democracy, pro-dictatorship party that is actively doing everything Vladimir Putin wants to undermine Western democracy, to kill NATO, and to rebuild the Soviet fucking Union.
This is a consequence of technology. This is media.
I mean, it would be impossible to think of anything that was more anathema to the values of the Republican Party just 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yep. Show over. I mean, that's really it, right? The reason why I love talking to people like Rio and listening to people like Nicole Wallace is there is nothing quite so palpably fantastic as actual conservative rage, because their entire project is dead. It's religious garbage now. Like, just tacking that onto everything that Rio just said, it's like a cancerous wart on a misogynist fucking dick. Like, it's really not good. Sorry for that image, by the way.
God, that's disgusting.
It's not.
Stream.
Sorry, buddy.
That show is normally a lot more wholesome than this.
Exactly. Right. Everyone just tunes in to listen to his voice. You could read the freaking phone book, and everyone would be like,
"Oh, that's a great idea."
Anyway. Yeah, you could do that. I would actually tune in to listen to that. But yeah, everything Rio said is true, right? Like the what's happened now to the Republican Party, and Rio and I talk about this on our show all the time. The Republican Party has to die. Like, it has to be ruthlessly punished. And the impeachment thing, like, the speaking softly about it or wanting to come to unity, like Gabbard is freaking over. Sorry if you like Tulsi Gabbard, but she's wrong, and this is why. Everything that Rio just said is completely and totally true. And the only thing the Democrats in the House can do is impeach. The only thing the Republicans should be doing, if they actually believe in the Constitution, and they don't, is impeach. You have to impeach them. Even if you fail, you have to do it.
Even if the Republicans in Congress were just willing to stand up for their own values, because apart from the ones who the Trump wing of the GOP who came in 2016, right? Apart from those members who are a minority, the vast majority of the Republican establishment hates him just as much as I do. Oh, and by the way, to the point that you just made about conservatives and everything, Corey, I can speak from personal experience. There's absolutely nobody Trump supporters hate more than a never Trump conservative. We are the absolute bottom of the totem pole as far as they're concerned. And
well, I mean, honestly, they should be terrified of you because you're right. 100%. That's exactly it.
That's anyway. That's
you cause the most cognitive dissonance in somebody that has to stick their head up their own ass to still believe what they're believing and think they're a good person.
But so what's happening? Let's be really clear about this. What people like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are doing, okay? They are failing to stand up for their own values, okay? And it's not. I mean, it's not just party over country. It's party over the actual foreign policy and economic policy that they would prefer. Right.
Yeah.
At this point, the Republican Party has no values. They are just a cult of personality around one of the worst human beings alive. And for that reason, I do think they need to die. I think they need not. I wouldn't go as far as to say is die, because unfortunately, the Democratic Party, apart from Yang, isn't really well positioned to criticize Trump on this stuff. And part of the reason he gets away with it is because the only people who could really voice all the problems with what Trump is doing are in his own party and are unwilling to say so publicly, right? But I do think that the Republican Party needs to lose epically so that then they can say, oh boy, I guess selling out to that con man traitor wasn't such a good thing for us. We better rediscover our small government roots and give up on this neo-fascist bullshit.
Here's the thing, though. They're all greedy pieces of shit. They got a $2 trillion tax break. Yeah. They got, all the companies they're invested in are doing stock buybacks to, magically inflate the bubble that is the current stock market. And they've got judges that will be protecting white nationalist priorities for the rest of our lifetimes. Right?
I'm sorry to say this, but like my wife and I were actually after that fancy Christmas party, we went to another fancy Christmas party, which was at the nicest restaurant in town. And then after that, we went out.
I freaking love you guys.
Right. And while we're totally drunk on cocktails, we were talking to the bartender. And one of the conclusions we came to was like, fascism is going to be fine for people like us. We're going to be okay, and for the people who are going to be screwed by it are going to be the lower middle class and working class people who elected Trump or who helped elect him by refusing to vote for Hillary Clinton. If they're not Republicans, those people are going to be completely fucked. You're right. And the Republicans in Congress are they're just being completely selfish. They are fine with blowing up democracy because they know they will personally be fine. If nothing else, they can afford to leave the country and start somewhere else.
Ripping it back to Yang. Yang said that nobody in Washington is going to suffer. You guys are all going to do fine no matter what you decide. And that's true.
That was an incredible closing statement.
It was perfect.
It was great. We've reached Washington's worst nightmare come true. As George Washington was leaving office, he said, "Beware. the two-party system. Do not fall into the two-party system, because what we are doing right now is it is like tribalism turned up to 11, to the point where logical and reasonable thought just doesn't exist, and you can't expect it to. And I think it's also a symptom of the scarcity mindset on a societal scale. This is infected into the zeitgeist of who we are as people. We can't understand the idea that all of us could actually get better together. I think the people who see other people doing well and then feel a negative emotion towards that are people who just exist completely within a zero-sum game mentality mindset, which is what our society essentially is, especially since labor is the underarching pillars that, you know, continue to lift us up. When labor is suddenly threatened, all of the zero-sum aspirations that we have previously thought about as defining this country, they suddenly start to get dismantled themselves. We have to introduce something that is a not zero-sum game and say, hey, we actually can progress. We actually can move towards a interstellar civilization. Like, why are we still dealing with these trivial fucking problems? Why don't we look towards actually going to Mars, right? What we're dealing with right now, it's so stupid. We don't need to deal with Trump. And why are we trying to defend Trump when we could have our eyes set so much higher? But the issue is that when you don't defend Trump, all of a sudden, you're defending Hillary Clinton. Yeah, you know, I just actually had a conversation with people, because I do live in the South, and they were like, and we were talking about the impeachment thing, and they said, listen, you know, what he did was wrong, but this is just so bad. The alternative was Hillary. The alternative was Hillary. And
who is conservative? Who is like more fiscally conservative than Trump?
Easily.
What they don't like about her is that she was too fiscally conservative for them. Like, the Republican Party is the left-wing party now. I'm telling you, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, it's
not the world that I grew up in.
I want to circle back though.
I'm only 35, dude. Like, I remember as a kid, like my family, everybody I knew, all of my friends' parents were Republicans because they were rich. And now the Republican Party is a party of a bunch of whiny babies who want Uncle Sam to solve all their problems for them. It's like total 180. It's ridiculous.
I just want to circle back and say thank you to Seth for everything you just said about the fact that we could be doing so much better. Like, as a species, when you sit back, like, if Yang was president right now, if a kind of Yang had been president, you know, since JFK, frankly, you know, we'd be on Mars, and we would be arguing about, like, do we go more to Mars, or do we go less to Mars, or do we go to, you know, we would be using our giant monkey brains for things that aren't like, hey, how do we not fall back into Hitler's fucking Germany, right? Yeah. That's a shitty question that I don't want to be dealing with right now. We could be doing so much better,
right? Exactly.
And to me, and I know you guys believe the same thing. Like not only what Yang is saying, but the way that he's saying it, the way that he's deducing the ideas that he's coming to, is just that distilled down to a presidential candidate.
Yes, 100%. You know, and like, this is also a problem, and Bernie is very good if you bring this up directly, is that, like, our system is just fundamentally broken, and we have to continue to perfect it. And, like, I don't know, I remember seeing Ray Dalio, or whatever his name is, billionaire dude at the Davos, saying, you know, we need to increase taxes on the lower class as well, because they don't know what's best for them. We can't allow them to have so much. Like, I don't know if y'all saw.
Are you talking about Bloomberg?
No, Ray Dalio.
No, you're right. It was Bloomberg. It was Bloomberg.
That's the thing, because Ray Dalio is usually a lot better than that.
But he was talking about luxury taxes on soda, right? I feel like the way that progressives are characterizing that is completely, they've just blown that out.
Well, I think, like, and to that point, right,
like taxes on poor people. He was justifying as the mayor of New York, having a luxury tax on sugary drinks, right?
That's a good
Which
point.
is kind of like
using that for healthcare, right? No, and that's the thing. Like, in Canada, we have sin taxes, right? We have like, alcohol up there is about 2 or 3 times what it costs down here. Cigarettes the same way. All of that money goes into healthcare costs, because those healthcare costs are going to be increased for the people that are doing those things, because we can actually track that nationally. Like, we know how much more it costs, and that cost gets put on the people that are actually doing the activity.
It's actually more progressive to tax things that people don't need and that are bad for them than it is to tax labor, which is what we do now.
Right.
Okay, so I actually have I tweeted out a couple of quotes from Yang's closing statement, because it was just
on.
I love how he started. He says, "I know what you're thinking, America. How am I still on stage with them?"
That was awesome.
And then he basically works around to like, the reason why is because our campaign is laser focused on finding real solutions to the problems our country faces. That could not have gone better. I think that the part where he sort of attacked DC and struck a little bit of a populist note, actually, I think that weakened his closing statement slightly. But the opening part was really strong. So we have not talked about Klobuchar and Steyer much yet. What do you guys think of Klobuchar?
I think Klobuchar did better than the last debate, except for the beginning, where one of the first things she says was about climate change, and they were like, this is another interesting thing, actually, when it comes to climate change, is I think that Yang actually succeeded in moving the Overton window with climate change, because at first everyone was like, oh, whoa, he's talking about giving up, and now we're having to move everyone further inland and everything, and now it's kind of like accepted that this is a very real possibility. That's an Overton window shift.
Inevitably, you're right. He drove it into the Overton window, and now everyone was like, why would we rebuild the same place using government money 10 times? Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and so like Klobuchar's like, oh, well, I hope that we're not going to have to move entire cities, maybe a few individuals. And then the very next sentence she says was, this is an existential crisis. Like all of a sudden, like it's going into this stump speech thing where it's like, well, make up your mind. Is this existential? Are we going to be moving cities? That's what existential means to me. Or like what's actually going on there? That was a critique I had of her. I think she was much more well composed in this. She had some zinger moments.
She didn't do the shaking thing at all.
That's the thing. Like I was happy to see her just be in her stride. I didn't agree with everything that she said, but she was at least delivering it like a powerful human being, as opposed to somebody who literally looked like she had a gun to her head the whole time. It was really, really hard to watch her in the last debate.
I've noticed
my mom is a Republican who voted for Obama twice.
Okay.
She really likes Klobuchar. She also likes Yang and Buttigieg. Yeah.
All right. Go Mom.
So Corey, what did you think? So you thought she did well? I mean, the optics of her just shaking less is kind of huge because, but it's kind of interesting to read about before television before television presidents and politicians in general were a lot uglier, right?
Can confirm.
People vote for people because they like their jawline or their hairline. It's kind of crazy, but unfortunately it's part of the package. And I thought she just looked more presidential. She did kind of like cry a little bit, but then she also, in one of her answers, she kind of cried a little bit. And then she said, well, but if I get worked up about this, it's because I think it's really important. Mm-hmm. I could see that working for or against her.
My biggest thing about that is I believed it. Right. And she's also trying to pull the like folksy, like only someone from the Midwest could win because we all come to get fuck off, right? Like that. I love that that's the case. Come on the Moving Forward podcast and see if you can hang with people that are actually doing post-partisan work. Because and honestly, she probably could, right? So that would be fantastic. But if you're not breathing that life into the policies, where she's like, no, we have to do the ACA in the same week where the mandate is being stricken down as unconstitutional. She wants to fix the ACA that is going to die. Everyone within the earshot of my voice right now understand this. The ACA is fucked.
Well, but
we're gonna have to replace it. Trying to fix it will not work.
It wasn't struck down as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, though, which has already ruled that it is constitutional. So unless the Supreme Court overturns their previous precedent, it's probably going to be okay.
They've already passed a law that's saying that states can choose whether or not to use it. It's already dead. It's already dead.
Well, then all the Trump states can have less healthcare. Fine.
As a federal system, Rio, it's going to die.
I consider that a silver lining. If Trump gets reelected and he guts the social safety net, I will consider that a silver lining.
Oh my God!
It's not good for democracy for him to get reelected, which is why it's not even about policy for me anymore. Like he is an existential threat to our country. He's got to go. But if the people who voted for him suffer a little bit, I'm not going to care. I don't care.
And if you happen to be a Democrat living next to a Republican in a red state, Rio says, fuck you.
All right.
Sorry, family show. I suck at this right now.
They can move to sunny California. They'll be fine.
Well, here's the thing. If they get the freedom dividend, yes. Otherwise, you're totally screwed.
Yeah, well, the big one's going to hit, and you're going to be out with Hawaii soon. So I don't know about that.
Oh, that's true. And also, California may have to build a wall in order to keep them all out.
Oh, my God.
All right, so Tom
did that
Steyer.
just happen?
So how did Steyer do, you guys? I thought he did well too.
I'm amazed that he's there, number one. But now, the biggest thing I have to say about Steyer is when he talks about driving money down to actually build grassroots support. So my buddy Greg, right, who does the hashtag coffee show with me, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever, right? So he actually worked for Our Future, which was the name of Steyer's group, his organizing PAC. They registered more voters in Florida than the entire Democratic Party in Florida, right? Like that. So when he actually talks about the work that he's been doing, can confirm it is work he has actually been doing, and it had an extremely tangible result in 2018. So I just want to give to a billionaire that we could all vilify. He's been doing the work with that, right? Maybe he's been doing it for his own reasons or whatever, but here's what's happening. He's really doing that work. And so to the extent that he's talking about climate change and that he's talking about, the way that he wants to talk about the economy or whatever, I feel like he has genuinely earned the right to say the things that he's saying.
Yeah, no, I actually kind of left him out of my list, but I mean, obviously my number one choice for president would be Yang, and also the number one in terms of electability in the general election, which I guess we can talk about a little bit if you want. But we've made the case for that on the show before, and the numbers haven't changed since then. But Steyer would be tied for number two, along with Buttigieg and Klobuchar for me. I think that, and I think he might be more electable than either Buttigieg or Klobuchar as well.
Interesting.
In terms of I think he'd be a good president, and I think that he'd be a good candidate because I appreciate the fact that he is willing to call out Trump for being a phony on the economy. And I believe that he could do it credibly because he's actually a real billionaire, right?
Right. Yep.
I think that he could take off the veil and reveal Trump to be a clown living on credit, who, because of the fact that he's had so many bankruptcies that he has to borrow money from the places like the Russian mob / government, which is the same thing, right? And meanwhile, like Steyer could he could spend, he could match or exceed the total amount that Trump's raised and the PAC money just out of his own pocket. And like it or not, especially when it comes to getting old people to vote for you, that money matters because you've got to get on network TV.
Yeah, it definitely will matter. And this is the thing, like if Steyer loses, I firmly believe that he's going to be doing more or less the same work that he was doing last time, which is fantastic. And, something to be said for his character. He was for impeachment right around the same time I was, and he has been screaming it from the rooftops, and he has been right every millisecond he's been doing it.
He won that bet.
Yeah, he did win that bet. I won that bet on that show, on my show with Greg. I was just a year and a half late, just because I was calling for it a long time ago. So I don't know if you guys I've been using ResistBot on Twitter. Totally aside, they just
I don't know what that is.
So if you go to @ResistBot. It's a bot that will actually message you sometimes and say, hey, like you're on the impeachment thing, it figures out who your members of Congress and senators are, and then like automatically sends them each a letter with a block of text that you send them. It's a really, really smart thing. Okay. Anyway, so it also asked me to endorse a candidate a little while ago. Of course, I endorsed Andrew Yang. And so there's actually been some changes. Do you want to endorse somebody else or do you want to change? Just type endorse. This is all in a Twitter message thread, right? So, I said endorse. I'd love to find out who's winning right now. So get this: there has been 100,000 people that play along with this. The top is Warren with 31%. The second is Sanders with 21%. Guess who is the third with 21%?
Yang.
It's your boy
Andrew motherfucking Yang.
Twitter is actually CNN talked about this in their analysis a bit too, because the world of Twitter is influential because it impacts the way that the media covers stuff sometimes. But there are a lot of people who aren't on Twitter and who don't really trust the mainstream media. And those, there's that whole other America that statistics like that don't represent, So that's awesome.
I get that.
Let me
just freaking give me this one for a minute, Rio. I know all that stuff. all of Seth's fans know all that stuff. Just give us a minute. Just a little minute.
Listen,
I know.
you guys, I figured...
why isn't he first, though?
Yeah. Well, time, right? It takes time to percolate into the culture.
Yeah.
I know this is not based in any sort of fact whatsoever, but
Best way to start a sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even a political. I'm not a political pundit. I don't know why anyone watches me because I'm not. But anyway, I'm kidding. Absolutely. My thought is that the internet can elect a president, and I think it happened in 2016. I'm just saying. The first moment that I started my account was when I saw on 4chan people making memes about Yang, and it was some terrible stuff. I'm telling you, dark corner of the internet type of stuff, which was quickly put in the ground by the campaign. They were like, we don't want any part of this and everything. But I think that the numbers online do stand for something important. I understand what you're saying.
Oh yeah, no, I think the way Rio described it is probably accurate, right? I think the because we're able to talk to all these people, and because a lot of the media personalities now are interacting and doing their work in Twitter, which is the big huge morass where we're throwing all of our brains all the time. It can lead to coverage on the TV where the boomers will see it, right? So that's kind of the vector, right? Like Twitter is where all of these things are mixing together. Whatever comes to the frothest to the surface of that noise becomes signal that ends up being percolated to the older media. I think that's probably the way it's working.
Say about it.
Hey, God damn it! I wish you were wrong.
Yeah.
Makes me sad.
Well, that's my expectation too. As things were ramping up, I was like, Twitter's gonna boom like the spark, and then we're gonna get rolling with the media coverage. And I tweeted back in April. MSNBC, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it never
it's legit.
Better. Never.
I do believe, and I've put money on this today, that before the end of this election, they're going to be working overtime to bend over backwards to fix this.
I don't think so. No.
I could be wrong, but I have a feeling it'll happen.
Well, actually, this is something that I've been touching on the podcast periodically, but I haven't gotten a chance to fully flesh out yet. But by comparison, look at what happened with Fox News and Donald Trump, right? Because during the Republican primary, they were about as anti-Trump as you could be, right? Their coverage, they were trying their best to get their credulous viewers to back Jeb Bush, right? Or somebody like that. And certainly not Trump. And by the time that Trump won the nomination, they had become the Trump channel. And they did that because they realized they had
no choice.
Well, because their job is to tell their viewers what they want to hear, not to actually tell them what the truth is, right? Yeah. And this is also true about MSNBC. So like I could see if Yang wins the nomination, then yes, MSNBC is going to have to change their tune. But right now, they are clearly very committed ideologically to the Democratic mainstream, which is like an authoritarian, statist, left-wing nanny state. And they do not like Andrew Yang's more libertarian approach to these issues. But if he wins, then they'll have no choice, otherwise, because it's about making money, right? And if they realize
even if he's in the top three,
they're going to give him what they want.
Yeah, even if he's in the top three, which I think at the very least, I feel very, very confident he's going to be in the top three of this race at some point if he doesn't win.
That's amazing. You're so
I believe that.
I hope you're right.
I honestly all it takes is looking at a trend. And when I'm a huge fan of exponential trends of all kinds, not just around automation, AI, and trading, and every other kind of thing. Like once you see a trend that is only moving over time in one direction, and it is in fact moving exponentially, the results are it's far more likely that trend will continue than it won't. Right?
Hasn't he been stuck nationally at like 3 to 6% for a while now, though? I mean,
if you think about what the knee of the curve looks like, that's it, right? Okay. And that we're not even in the knee of the curve yet. This is just where it's actually starting to achieve liftoff. But it's still gone from 0 to 1, from 1 to 2, which is exponential, from 2 to 4, which is exponential, from 4 to 6, 7, maybe he'll hit 8. It's happening.
This debate needed to be a game changer for him, and it was.
Agreed. Yep.
So unfortunately, not a lot of people actually watched the debate. One thing I noticed that was really good, though, is that he got a lot of incredible responses in like the first 20 or 30 minutes, which is actually the time when the viewership tends to be the highest. So even though the second half was weaker for him, apart from his excellent closing statement, I think that it was all very good. I think anybody who watched that debate came away with a positive view of Yang, which is a good thing. And the part that I find most encouraging is the fact that CNN's pundits were singing his praises before and during and after the debate. So I think in order for him to actually get that bump, that not just a bump, I mean, realistically, to stay in the game, he needs to double his numbers. Okay.
Agreed.
And for that to happen, as Van Jones predicted, and he's a smart guy, knows what he's talking about. So here's hoping, right? But for that to happen, the media needs to change the way they cover Yang as a consequence of the fact that he had such a good performance in this debate. And if they don't, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he needs media outreach. Like, there's a reason why, we kind of, get this feeling that the mainstream media is actually like out to get candidates and is for some other candidates. Here's the thing: they have people that they've hired that have relationships with all these journalists. Yeah. Like that is a huge part of it, right? So it's not necessarily some nefarious thing, and I would argue probably not at all. It's really just the sum total of the amount of relationships that you develop in Washington and New York and LA. Right. And that's it's ugly and it sucks, but that's part of it. That's part of the game.
Yeah. Yang is well connected, but not in the political world for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but it's coming, right? Like Van Jones and David Axelrod, like the access is coming at a very, very interesting clip. I would say this, and I want everyone to Google this, message me on Twitter, on Facebook, if you find that I'm wrong. And I don't believe that I am. They do not poll people that didn't vote in the last election or the election before. How many times have you heard people say, I've never donated to a campaign, I never vote, I wasn't registered, yada, 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 yada. I personally, and again, I am a like breathtakingly idiotic optimist. I mean, I'm just going to put that out there. This is a real thing that exists, right? I think there's a really, really good chance he's already going to double the polls in Iowa and New Hampshire. And
I think he's definitely going to outperform his polls. And that's part of the reason Trump outperformed his polls as well.
Right.
And in the case of Trump, there's also the added factor that a lot of people were probably embarrassed to tell even a stranger over the phone that they supported him. But yeah, no, I fully expect Yang to outperform his polls. That's
the apathetic majority. Most people in this country do not vote. And it's, I don't know if a candidate's ever been able to really speak to them before. I think Bernie succeeded a little bit because I remember when I was supporting him in 2016, there was a lot of talk of like when the caucuses showed up, they were packed to a degree that they weren't expecting in terms of years prior. How cool would it be if all of a sudden like people from all over are coming into the caucuses and it's all for Yang wearing math hats? I've never voted before, man, but this dude, he got me. He got me.
That will be part of the story. Like, to what extent, we can't know that right now, but that will absolutely be part of the story, and that's going to make for a really, really fun night.
Mm-hmm.
So one Yang answer we haven't addressed yet. I feel like we've talked about most of them, and really they were all very good. One Yang answer we haven't talked about yet was the one about immigrants and immigration and so forth. So the Dreamers issue, right? He said, like, look, I'm a son of immigrants myself, and I know that Dreamers are. I think it was so noble of him to say this because it is a political third rail. But he stood up for his values, and he's completely right. Dreamers are Americans in every sense other than legally. Well, of course they are, right? They grew up here. They don't know any other country. To deport them, back to a country that they weren't even old enough to remember when they left it, at no choice of their own. Like, they didn't consciously choose to break the law. Their parents did, right? So punishing them for something their parents did it's not just cruel, it's un-American, because you're taking people who grew up in this country, who are Americans, who share our values, and you're just sending them to some strange land where they might not even speak the language. It's just seriously messed up. So I really thought that was beautiful that he put it that way. And I think because of the fact that Yang does so well for whatever reason with the Trump wing of the GOP, he would by far have the biggest landslide against Trump. Because I believe he's the only candidate. I agree with you, Corey. I think all of the Democratic candidates would do well against Trump and have a good shot. But like, Yang is the only candidate who is not only going to get, never Trump conservatives like me, right? But he's going to be peeling away Trump's base, or a good chunk of his base. Yeah. And Trump absolutely does fear Yang. And any Democrat who wants to prioritize defeating Trump needs to vote for Andrew Yang. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. That strength that Trump has, especially against Bernie, should Bernie get it, in my opinion, is he's a socialist. He's a self-avowed socialist, and he willingly admits it. Yang doesn't go there. He says, we are moving beyond this outdated dichotomy of socialism versus capitalism.
It's a better way of putting it.
It frustrates me that the left keeps on like calling Yang a capitalist, or that they're still, you mentioned at some point that you're keeping it on life support with the UBI. No, I completely disagree. You're evolving capitalism. It's capitalism 2.0, baby. We're going to the stars.
It's like capitalism 4.0, right? I mean, we already have like social democracy in this country. We're already in capitalism 3.0. So yeah. And by the way, I wanted to clarify my point. I wasn't saying that Yang is going to get Trump voters because of what he said about Dreamers, right? What I'm saying is I think he could heal this country in a beautiful way because he somehow gets Trump supporters and they respect him and they trust him, and he can convince them to give up their racist hatred, right? And it's something that this country needs. Like he will defeat Trump if he's the nominee, and he will heal the disgusting divides in this country, which Trump intentionally perpetuates.
Yeah, and there's such a struggle with me believing so deeply in what you just said, and especially on the Twitter sphere, which it's funny, whenever I see the good numbers, I say, oh, the internet matters, and then whenever I see bad numbers or bad sentiments, I say it doesn't matter at all. But I think that the people who are supporting Andrew Yang are people who understand this, whether or not they consciously understand it or subconsciously, is that there's a potential here to actually heal. Like, one of the things that I said is stress and anxiety and depression actually are able to make memory loss, right? Like, that to me is a human rights issue, that if you have a country that is so stressed, so burnt out, so depressed, it's not only that they have a higher chance of committing suicide, but you could potentially be altering their perception of the passage of time based upon this abstract idea of scarcity and if you can consider the fact that could be our reality, that we live in abundance, we choose to live in scarcity, and it's causing a massive amount of people in our country to like have their lives taken away from them, their perception of reality different than the rich. It's so like, I mean, there are like science fiction dystopian movies that give me this pit of horror in my stomach, and we always kind of push it away because we don't want to deal with such existentialism. But this campaign, the messages behind it could start to actually say, listen, what he says about your children are going to be okay. It's not just your children. It's going to be the country. Man, I like my dream for Yang. It's so powerful. And the people who are supporting Yang, I understand, are going to have this energy about them that should Yang not do well, should he start to fall, should all of this become the long shot that it is, and we might have to wait 8 more years for a universal basic income, the people aren't going to handle that very well, I'm afraid, in the Yang gang. I've seen some people where they're like, Yang's healthcare plan wasn't quite cutting it for me. Until something new happens, I'm going to take off the blue hat. And then like the reactions that I see to those people are, it sucks, but I understand them. I understand that fiercity of like, you can't do this, you can't go away, he's still the best, blah, blah, blah. The people have so much riding on this guy. I have so much riding on this guy. I hope that he makes it.
Right. Well, I think that what you said about people don't want to face that kind of existentialism is key, right? Because again, I keep coming back in my mind to that math hat wearing Trump supporter I blocked last night on Twitter. Like, the thing I noticed is his defense of Trump, and every step of the way was, yes, if he did what you just said, if he actually did it, that would be impeachable. However, they want like absolutely perfect evidence wrapped up in a bow. Like, we have tons of evidence,
which for the record, they have.
Right. But the whole point is you keep moving the goalposts. And the reason they move the goalposts is because they have tethered themselves to Trump's boat, right? They've tethered their rickety little boat to Trump's super yacht, and they're going down with it in the storm. And there's nothing you can do to change their mind. And the reason for that is exactly what Seth just said. They don't want to face up to the fact that they, by voting for Trump and by continuing to support him in polls, are directly contributing to an existential threat to America.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody wants to acknowledge it. People want to take it for granted. There's this woman, an author, I forget her name right now, who immigrated here from Turkey. And she gave this beautiful speech about how the U.S., not just the U.S., but the entire Western world is moving toward authoritarianism and neo-fascism. just like Turkey did. And she said, look, people in Turkey didn't want to believe that it was possible. Here, people don't want to believe it's possible. Nobody wants to do it. Gary Kasparov, who is, obviously a world chess champion and a huge democracy advocate and big critic of Putin. He recently said something on Twitter that was like, I have a long list of people saying Putin would never do that, going back to 1990. And now he's hearing the same thing from people in the US. Oh, Trump wouldn't do that. And then he does it. And then, oh, well, he won't do this. They keep moving the line and then he crosses it again. And then they just keep moving it.
Yeah, it's Hitler creep. And I hate bringing that up, but that's
dies. This is how democracy
100%.
dies. This is how democracy dies, and these people need to own up to the role that they played in it, because the only thing they can do to save it is to look in the mirror and say, "Oh, I got duped by a con man dictator who openly says he wants to be president for life and is talking about seriously talking about a third term. Even named somebody to represent him for his third re-election campaign." Right?
Yep.
This is not. This is real life, people.
The imperative that humanity must have is that we have to be able to look in the mirror and acknowledge that we are monsters, or we have the potential to be monsters. And unless that's driven into each and every single one of us, Hitler creep will continue on. And we do need an example of actual abundance. I think that's how we nip this in the bud right now. Because imagine universal basic income passes. Holy shit, we can do it. It actually works and succeeds. And the sky didn't fall, right? Like when we legalized marijuana and nothing happened. People are a little bit happier. They're making tons of money and everything. The sky did not fall. It's going to happen with the universal basic income, and it's going to shatter. It's going to shatter the entire scarcity-based illusion, zero-sum game that we live in. And then spiritual healing can begin. You're going to deal with a lot of people who are still stuck in Stockholm Syndrome, who refuse to believe it and everything. But that's okay. We can work on that. That's how the zeitgeist, spiritual healing starts. That's how we avoid children in cages, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want to touch back on what you were talking about as far as people really having a lot riding on Yang like that. I come down really, really hard on the Yang or bust people, and I always will, because that is fundamentally an error. Just because Trump is on the other side of this argument, and please, everyone, keep that in mind, because of the existential crisis that he has for democracy. Period. Right? Like stopping authoritarianism. That's rule number one, and the rest, to your point, like we have to be working towards this. But if Yang doesn't win this nomination right now, Rio and I aren't quitting.
Right?
Like that's when the game gets much bigger. When Yang wins, the game gets much bigger. Right? Like we still need to start packing people like Ryan Blevin. Is that his name? Blevin, whatever the fuck his name is. Yeah. Thank you. We need the UBI caucus to be voted into Congress. That's going to take a lot of work, right? Yes. Like there's a very real probability that this will not happen this time, but will happen next time, because these things take time to percolate into the culture. And don't get me wrong, like it's not impossible for it to happen this time. I'm still excited about that. I still see that as a glaring possibility, which is fantastic.
Right.
But like, if you believe this is as amazing as it is, to have a human-centered capitalism, to have, a moving forward platform, to have people like Republicans and Coreycrats, coming together in the middle of the middle of the night all the time to come together towards consensus ideas, then it has to be longer than this. Yeah. We have to be okay with being patient with, if we don't win this time, we work 10 times harder. We maybe take one day off and then keep going, right? Get some more congressional candidates for the middle and run Yang again, or run whoever Yang thinks would be better.
I completely agree with all that. And of course, we're going to do that. And we're going to create a UBI PAC for the purpose of supporting the UBI caucus. I mean, we're going to do all of that. This is happening whether Yang wins or not. Yang is going to endorse somebody if he drops out. This he might be on someone's administration. Things are going to keep going forward. That's for sure. But I just want to say, in the spirit of not being afraid to look at existentialism. Okay. Because it is obviously, it's easier in the short term to ignore it because it's too scary to think about.
Right.
But the one caveat to everything you just said, Corey, is that each time somebody like Trump gets reelected, and by the way, I don't think Trump is Hitler. Okay. Really don't. I think he's a different person. I think Hitler was a worse person than Trump. Okay. A lot worse. All right. So I'm not saying that he's the same thing, but the point is, if if our standard for whether or not we should remove a president is, do we like their policies and is the economy doing well, then as long as somebody is sufficiently popular with their own base, they can get away with every kind of banana republic corruption. And then our democracy is in serious trouble. So the big caveat is, do not underestimate the willingness of some bad actors to cheat.
Yeah.
And that is going to make that much more of an uphill battle. And it really is scary as hell. And the longer that he stays in, it's like him getting reelected. Here's the way I look at it. The reason I think that he needs to be voted out, and that I so much so that I will even vote for a socialist to get him out. And you guys realize I hate that, right? If he
hasn't been clear the first 10 times, he will be clear the next 10 times.
I would have said, if you told me 10 years ago there was any universe where I would do that, I would say absolutely not. I will, but only because it'll be a vote against Trump. And Trumpism needs to die, because if he gets reelected, then the narrative will be he was exonerated by the Senate, he did nothing wrong. Yep. And even if he doesn't go on to a third term, because that is, I mean, he has like Huckabee and other members of the GOP establishment already making the case on Fox News for the fact that for why he is an exception to the rule and should be allowed to have an unconstitutional third term. That is
incredible.
That's still a long shot, right? So realistically, if he gets reelected and he doesn't do a third term and he gets carried out in a straitjacket because he refuses to leave the White House, even then, like, his having been reelected once means that the GOP has learned cheating pays.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, they already have.
And the next person will cheat, and then the next person will cheat, and no matter.
And then Buttigieg is going to say, "I have to cheat because they're cheating."
Yeah, no matter what your ideology is, no matter what your policy preferences are, try to imagine somebody who disagrees with you on everything having that kind of strongman power and willingness to cheat in a democracy. And if they get away with cheating often enough, then it no longer is a real democracy.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly the situation in Russia. They have elections, they just don't mean anything.
You're bringing up that scary reality that we can sometimes realize when you've maybe, been to Colorado and you've indulged a little too much, that all of this is just an illusion. Like, there's the laws, everything about our government is just based upon a shared it's the same thing with money. It's a shared understanding that, yeah, we're going to do things this way, and we respect the way that it's been set up, and we are determined to keep the integrity of that intact above a shadow of a doubt. Even if we may not feel the best about having to defend it, that takes priority overall, and we've lost that. And that's a terrifying thing. I completely agree with what you've said.
By the way, in the spirit of Yang being a capitalist, part of his answer about immigration too was like, look, something like half or more than half of Fortune 500 companies were started by immigrants or the immediate children of immigrants. Immigration is essential to the vitality of the United States. And I thought that was a really great thing for him to say. He does thread the needle. Corey and I talked about this the other day, but like Trump basically represents like the absolute worst ideas on the far left and the far right put together, right? Yang represents the best ideas of the left and right put together.
Agreed.
And boy, that would be a wonderful pendulum swing if we can pull it off.
Amen.
And the way that we're going to pull it off is, I'm serious about this. This is what America could be, published by Childish Gambino. A new music video. I'm telling you, could you imagine if he could pull off what This Is America did?
Oh my gosh. I just hope it doesn't come off as too pedantic, but he is a genius. He's a great artist. So
that's the thing. Childish Gambino being pedantic is not something I see.
It sounds saccharine as hell, but he would make it beautiful.
This is the golden opportunity, right? And this is what I was saying earlier. Obama can't endorse Andrew Yang, but Obama can and has endorsed universal basic income.
True.
Childish Gambino doesn't have to make a video about Yang. Childish Gambino has to make a video about universal basic income. That is the difference. That is what makes Yang's campaign so powerful.
My God. And he could totally essentially make it look like Obama's endorsing Yang indirectly, because he kind of is endorsing.
Well, you know what? Honestly, like, what if he
policy, which he's the only one who has.
What if he just remade This Is America?
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like, and just remake the video. Like, obviously, this is what America could be. Like, this too is America, for fuck's sake. Like, there's no laws of physics that say that we can't do this, and that we really couldn't do it easily if we just decided to all make it happen.
It's the same exact video, but like instead of a gun, it's like something else. You superimpose the different things. He walks around, and everything around him is in an entirely different reality. And then it possibly might be able to say at the end of it, universal basic income, the path forward, or something. Like this is a golden opportunity. You invade into the culture just like This Is America did. I think that's how you win.
Honestly, it really could be. It really could be.
That could help Yang with African American voters too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like get Obama's statement about UBI in there in the context of Donald Glover endorsing Yang. I mean that could just double his numbers right there, because unfortunately he's mostly doing well with like young white men right now, right? Yeah. He has a ideologically as diverse a coalition as you could hope for, but like in terms of race and sex, it needs to be diversified some, and hopefully Glover can help with that. All right, any final words before we call this? Is this like our 4th debate talk now, Seth? Something like that?
I think it is.
That's awesome.
I'm loving the tradition, and
Yeah, I'm in for all of them. Yep.
Yeah.
And even if Yang's not in the next debate, we're still going to do this.
Hell yeah, and to spend the entire time talking about how Yang would have done.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hoping is that if that eventuality could happen, that Yang sits in front of a live stream, and then just like every time there's a question asked, he says, "This is the answer that I would have given."
Oh, that'd be great. That might be better.
Exactly. It would be
like,
it would be the first time something like that has happened in the internet age, with the ability to do that, to give a giant middle finger to the entire debate setup. I think it would work, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. In fact, I'm sure that's the plan. If he doesn't qualify for the next debate, he'll either drop out or he'll do what you just said, right?
I don't think he'll drop out. He's got enough money. He's got enough money not to drop out. There's
that's true.
There's only downside.
Ran out of money, right?
And like she's got she's got the Senate, pulling her back.
And she wants to do another run another time.
Right. Like there's right now there's no upside for quitting for Yang right now. There just isn't.
Yeah, I agree. And he's been very clear, like, I'm going to go to Iowa. Like, I'm going to be there on Super Tuesday. It would have to be something huge for him to quit, in my opinion. Same thing goes for him accepting a VP slot or I've seen some talk about that, and I just completely disagree. There was one other thing that I was like, it was on the tip of my tongue. That do this all the time. Oh, crap, guys. Quick, say something. It's going to remind me. It's going to remind me.
Okay.
Have we run out of wine? Is that the reason why we're ending this? The wine cave is just.
I mean, I ran out of Bailey's. I'm pretty excited.
I drank 2 lattes and they're both gone now. So,
all right. Well,
you guys can tell that I'm jittery, but like I don't have any more coffee to consume.
This has been a great discussion, and I want to thank the chat for joining in on the live stream. Go and check out the Moving Forward podcast immediately after this if you want to just continue to hearing these two gentlemen exchanging a good, honest debate and conversation, and disagreeing and agreeing and all that. Let's do this again.
And if you're listening to this on the Moving Forward podcast, go check out Seth's Dividend Report on YouTube.
Yes, please.
It's
blowing
also,
up.
by the way, Seth, Andrew Yang is our
something on the tip of my tongue. Something.
Apple pie.
Yeah, right. Burrito. No, that's closer.
Yeah.
It is closer. Burrito is closer.
It is.
This is your 4th time, and you still don't
so
remember
close.
The taco, dude.
Oh, yes, that's right. That is right. Andrew Yang is my taco.
Yep. Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Oh man, thanks, man. All right, so we stopped recording the podcast thing. I want to say thank you to everybody that was paying attention to us on the Dividend Report feed. The comments are fantastic. The conversation is great. You guys are really cool, and thanks for having us. I mean, Seth, we're huge fans of your work and you in general. So that's good. And again, your voice has made both of my nipples hard.
Yeah, no. If you read, actually, my wife does this. There are podcasts that exist for the sole purpose of getting people to help people fall asleep, right? Which sounds like an insult, but like no, actually, like there are podcasts you subscribe to that people pay for because it's so hard to sleep. And I think that you reading the phone book or anything, any random thing would actually be really helpful for people like my wife who like to listen to those, because you do have the right voice for it.
I would legit try that. That's a good point. Just the soothing, dulcet tones of the Seth Underwood.
I might actually think about doing that because a lot of the comments on my videos have been, dude, I cream for your voice. That's not a good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even say that. Jesus Christ.
I know, but there are like other people, and I'm flattered and disturbed at the same time because sometimes I wonder just what people are watching my videos for. But yeah, I need a new microphone. I'm like literally recording in a sunroom, and the echo is terrible. So I'm working on the setup there.
You sound pretty good on my end.
Yeah, you sound good here too.
Yeah, I think you're fine. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for having us on and for coming on our show.
Absolutely.
Crossover episode.
If you guys ever think, hey, Seth might have a very good input on this topic or something like that, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to continue on, guys.
Oh, we're gonna keep you in the debate lane.
Yeah.
We've got several like sub series. Another one is the Bear Cave, where we have AJ, the pragmatic progressive, on. And what sets that apart is that the three of us talk. We get into like comparing and contrasting Yang's policies, or even talking about ways to like compare his policies with other people, and improve his policies, right? So that's that. But yeah, we're keeping you in the debate talk lane.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you got to call
100%.
that Bear Cave. This is now Wine Cave from now on.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. This is our wine cave.
All right, guys, I'm going to let you go on for the rest of your day.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, this is our wine cave, but we also sell tacos.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, it's been a pleasure, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
What? Why wine? I mean, like it's just because it's a funny reference to the
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because the Bear Cave is so logical.
Well, it was trending.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
Twitter.
Yeah, no, I think co-opting the wine cave is exactly the way to go. Especially considering like when we ultimately someday end up in extremely high dollar wine cave, it's going to be way classier than fucking Pete Buttigieg's because Rio's going to be running that shit. So there you go.
I need to figure out.
Yeah, my wife routinely has nicer parties than that.
Routinely,
like hosts them. Yeah.
This is a joke, right?
No,
he's not kidding at all.
He's like renowned for her parties. She's an incredible hostess.
Wow.
There you go.
Well, I'm gonna get the picture of the wine cave and superimpose it like you're doing, Corey, with the movie.
I love it.
All right, I'll work on that and I'll be
Put
ready.
Put it in the background behind you.
Yeah.
And we'll shake the money tree. It'll be good.
But we didn't. But like our explanation about the wine cave didn't make it in that last episode on our podcast. So I think we'll have to like call this one debate talk and then make it wine cave from now on.
We can do whatever we want. We're big.
And if enough people press F in the chat or something, I have to like get up and shake an actual tree or something. We can really involve the audience in with this too.
Yeah. Well, no, they have to donate because they can donate on your YouTube channel. It's like $20. He'll get up and do the shaking the money tree dance. Not that we're gonna whore you out for money, but wait, that's what we're gonna do.
This brainstorm. Oh yeah, I love it. Okay, I gotta get the props.
All right, guys, take care.
Make it happen.
Yeah,
See you guys.
Thank you. See you.
Cheers.
All right, and that concludes the post-debate analysis and begins the post-debate analysis of the stream. I hope that I'm still continuing on here. Thank you all so much for joining along. I'm just going to take a quick look back. I think I saw one individual leave a super chat, so I'm going to address you first. Con Lee, thank you so much for leaving that. You can also leave a comment with the super chat if you want me to specifically address a certain message or something that you may have said at that point, but I really appreciate you supporting the stream. It means so much to me. Some of the points that I saw being put into the conversation during the entire point led to some real things that I wanted to talk about. The 3-hour debate was just too long to fit into a podcast like this, and you all had some really good points that you're putting in. This was a little bit of a deeper discussion in the debates, but that's what I love so much about Andrew Yang is that you can really dive deep into the issues that I think affect us all on a very core human level. And I'm looking forward to continuing doing these post-debate discussions with the Moving Forward podcast. So make sure that you are looking for those. And I have no doubt that we're going to qualify for the next debate, by the way. I don't know if I said that or not. So, yeah, well, if that's just going to do it here. If anyone has been missed in Super Chat or something, this is the first time I've done it, so I apologize if you have. But Yang Gang, I appreciate you so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and let's go and secure that bag.